There exists in every generation a curious folly. It is the moment a person comes to discover that for years, perhaps for decades, they have walked the world quite certain of things that were never true at all. Most will go to their graves before they ever arrive at such a moment. This folly has a name. They call it the Dunning-Kruger effect. It is the chasm between what one truly knows and what one believes they know. The less a person understands of a subject, the more certain they become that they have it figured out entirely. It wears the costume of clarity. It feels like seeing through the fog. It carries the conviction that the scholars and the experts have all overlooked some plain and simple truth. And around such a person gather others of the same mind. They nod, they applaud. The chorus swells. The certainty hardens into iron. They cease to ask questions, for they have every answer in their pocket. They do not know what they do not know, and so they fill the empty space with confidence. Most remain there. They depart this world without ever discovering they were mistaken. But every so often, a soul breaks ranks. They stumble upon evidence they cannot wave away. They sit with it. They confess it out loud before all who can hear. They lose their standing. They lose their living. They lose the regard of those who held them dearer when they spoke with conviction. And then they begin the long climb, up from the comfortable valley of certainty, up through study and doubt, and nights spent dismantling everything they once held to be true. They climb toward the truth and nothing else. When at last they reach the other side, something has changed. They no longer perform. They think. They grow sharper. They grow harder to deceive. It is the rarest act a person can perform. To be wrong, to admit it, and to begin again.
Test, test, test. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. I think that should be better. Rename this here. Give me a confirmation if anyone can hear me, if you don't mind. Okay, great. Sarah says we're good. Lovely. Good morning, everyone. Just saying we're checking recall alerts. I don't think I have anything. Checking my other alerts. Yep, looks like we're sticking with the same recalls. All Provide, My Pet Carnivore, and Raw Energy. Yeah, that should all be good there. Okay. Sorry, just having weird audio issues this morning, but I think we're okay. Okay, so yesterday we did a big long live stream. It was almost 3 hours where we made a bunch of homemade dog food. And right now I am working on cutting that down into the video that I'm going to produce. So that's what we're working on right now. And obviously feel free to stop me along the way if you have any questions. And what are you for? Get out of here. I heard about a claim that when it comes to raw recalls, the majority is raw covered kibble and not the 100% raw. Do you know if there is any accuracy to that claim? Let's look here. Okay. So I don't think this is true because if you just look at the last recalls listed here, Raw Energy sells genuine raw food, not raw coated kibble. Albright's sells raw food. Milk Replacer. Quest is raw food. Quest raw food. Multiple brand names. What was this? Gold Star Distribution. Yeah, I don't really know any of these brands. Dog biscuits. So I would say the majority of these recalls are raw food. And raw food actually, what was the stat? Raw food makes up like 5 to 10% of the overall market, but accounts for more than half the recalls. It's actually kind of insane. All right. Did that say rodent urine? I don't know. Did it? What was I on? Makes sense if they aren't doing HPP. Yeah, totally. I think even some brands that HPP can still run into issues, but I think there's less issues. I don't see anywhere where it says rodent urine, but the last recall page you were on was at the multiple brands. Oh yeah, no kidding. The U.S. FDA determined that the facility was operating under insanitary conditions, including the presence of rodent excreta, rodent urine, and bird droppings, an area where medical devices, drugs, human food, pet food, and cosmetic products were held. Yeesh. Sounds like it was an issue with the distributor, Gold Star Distribution. Yeah, good eye, Tatiana. You were right. They saw rodent urine. Also, apologies. You're not seeing what I'm seeing here, but it was right here. Yeah, gold star distribution. Kind of insane. Yeah, nice eye. Yikes is right. All right, we're just working on yesterday's video, so it'll be great for anybody that missed it too.
Today we are making a homemade dog food recipe for our 35-pound dog, Harper. She eats fully fresh homemade food now, so this is kind of the week bulk prep that we're doing. And we're specifically making the pork and apples recipe, and I'll go through all the ingredients as we start adding them in. Now, one thing I do want to show you before we get started here is how I actually get this recipe. Because the main thing that you want to be careful with homemade food is not falling into what we call the 95% trap, which is basically a study run by UC Davis that found that 95% of homemade dog food recipes online are not complete and balanced. And the only ones that were complete and balanced from the study were created by a veterinary nutritionist, which is exactly where our recipes come from. So we're on Fairbowl. This is our membership where all of our recipes live. And I'm gonna go to the recipe calculator. You'll see that I've already added 3 different dogs here. If I needed to add a 4th dog, I would add him right there, but I'm just gonna select Harper since she's already in. And these are all the different recipes that match with Harper.
Missed yesterday. I'm thinking about doing the pork and apples, so this is timely. Yeah, Sarah, let me know if you have any questions. This is honestly one of my favorite recipes that we have right now. I'm finding that it's one of the easiest, and it's one of the cheapest too. Like if you look on the screen right here, pork, quinoa, and apples, 3rd cheapest on our list.
Now, I specifically want grain-inclusive recipes for her, so I've only chosen the grain-inclusive ones, but we also have a wide variety of grain-free options. So today, we're specifically making the pork, quinoa, and apples. It's one of our most budget-friendly recipes, and I'm making it for 7 days. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set my slider to 7 days, and if you look at all the ingredient amounts, you'll notice that they change depending on how many days I choose. We tried to make this as easy as possible for people wanting to prep in bulk. So 7 days for my 35-pound dog, Harper, and these are all the different ingredients and amounts that we'll be needing to add.
And so what I'm doing right now is Madison is our content director. She's gone through the live stream and cut out this like big chunk of the homemade food video. What I have done is I have gone through and cut out the parts that I don't want in there. And now I'm doing another pass to make marks where I want to like add the UC Davis study or add a QR code on screen, things like that,
as well as the instructions. Now, if you get down to the bottom here, this is actually pretty cool. You can copy the grocery list, which basically allows you to open up a Google Doc or a message thread or a notes page and paste that right in. And that gives you all the same information for however many days you're batching for your specific dog. You can also download the PDF, and that's gonna open up a printable PDF version if you wanna maybe print it out and tape it to your fridge so you always have it there. Okay, now the first thing that we need to do is weigh out all of our ingredients. This recipe is formulated down to the gram, and of course we're not perfect here, but we're gonna try and get as close as we can to the actual amounts that we're supposed to be feeding. My goal is for you to feel more confident in what you feed your pets, and if that's homemade food, I want you to feel like it's easy, it's safe, and it's something sustainable that you can do long term.
That's literally the whole reason we have built Fairbowl, because I have been struggling to find out what I should be feeding my dog for, let's call it 5-6 years now. And it doesn't matter what I'm feeding. If it's commercial food, I don't know what brands are safe, and I don't know what marketing is legit and what marketing to ignore. If it's homemade food, I don't know how to make it safe. I don't know how to ensure the homemade food has every single vitamin and mineral and nutrient that my dog needs to survive. And so that's the resource I have built. I've gone through so many different pet food brands, so many different homemade dog food recipes, and I finally feel like I have a lineup that I actually can trust. And then of course we have homemade recipes like in this video that are formulated by a real expert. So I know every single vitamin and mineral that my dogs need is in there.
Life's kind of crazy.
Shout out to Madison for her efforts. Oh my gosh, Sarah, shout out to Madison in the biggest way. We could not do anything that we do without her. Hey, was watching the video last night, was not able to watch live, but I think you forgot to add the calcium into Harper's food. Did I? Now I can't remember. I guess maybe we'll find out in this video. Appreciate you, Xena. Experience is a very good teacher. Sarah, I think it is the absolute best teacher.
Easy right now, so I'm using paper plates because I don't want to do a ton of dishes. I don't want Kenzie to have to do a ton of dishes, and this is just where we're at. All right, so our main protein source for this recipe is going to be 8515 ground pork. Just over 2 pounds, 2 pounds, 1 ounce. So I know this will be 1.5.
Yeah, also on the topic of Madison, every single video that you guys see on our channel is edited and produced by her. Kind of insane.
Pounds. So that can go straight in. And then 2 pounds, 1 ounces is 33 ounces minus 1.5 pounds. So 33 minus 24. So I need 9 ounces of ground pork.
Was that math correct?
1/2 pound pork. Just over 2 pounds. 2 pounds, 1 ounce. So I know this will be 1.5 pounds. So that can go straight in. And then 2 pounds, 1 ounces is 33 ounces minus 1.5 pounds. So 33 minus 24. So I need 9 ounces of ground pork.
I did not.
And this is what I do when I have extra pork. I just throw it in a little baggie. I label it.
Also, how's the volume? How's the volume of like what you're watching compared to me? Are either of them too high? Because I can adjust them.
Specifically, so I know how much it is, what it is, and when I actually put it in the freezer. And that way, when I make another recipe.
On the meat issue, I found pork 80-20. Will that make a difference? It will make a difference. To be totally honest, I don't exactly know how much. So all I can really give you is my personal thinking. This recipe calls for 85-15 ground pork or 84-16 ground pork. I found 85-15. I would probably feel comfortable feeding my dogs 80-20, but I probably wouldn't do it long term. I would be okay feeding it for like a meal or two, and then I would try to switch them to something a little closer because the fat to protein ratio is going to affect calories and amino acids and all those things.
I can just pull this out, as I always have a little bit of extra. My dog has horrible allergies, and I've been holding off on giving pork in case we ever need to do a novel protein diet. Is this necessary, or should I just try it? It's honestly totally up to you. My thinking is you'll never know if you never go. So I always think, try something, see how it works, make adjustments then. That being said, if you do think pork is going to be a trigger and you want a real novel protein, we have a venison recipe. Now, with our eggs, a lot of people ask me why I don't include the shell, because the shell is like 97% calcium carbonate, and of course, dogs need calcium in their recipes. And the reason is because it's kind of a lot of extra work for me, and it's less consistent. So what I mean is, if I use the eggshell, I have to first do some math to figure out exactly how much calcium carbonate is in there, and then I'm trusting the fact that those...
Explain to me why right here I take each individual eggshell to the trash can instead of just putting it on the paper plate in front of me.
Those exact eggshells have that exact amount of calcium carbonate in them, and that's just not really how nature works. Nature is not exact, it's not perfect, and if I'm feeding my dog something every single day and they're relying on this food for all of their nutrients, I want to make sure it's as consistent as possible. So we do not use eggshells, we use just regular calcium carbonate. It's easier, less work for me, and it's more consistent, so safer for my dogs. After that, we have our quinoa. We need 11 ounces of quinoa. I'm just going with classic, whatever I can find in the store. Today it was Red Mill, but any regular quinoa will work. Can anyone confirm, isn't quinoa technically a seed and not a grain, but a lot of people consider it a grain?
I think I did confirm that quinoa is indeed a seed, but it is also widely considered a grain. I read how to make your own calcium powder using the eggshells. I went, nope, too much work. Yeah, Sarah, I'm with you. Taking the eggshell and dehydrating it and powdering it and then doing the math to figure out how much calcium is in there. Or I could literally just buy calcium carbonate from the store and dose it with a teaspoon and I don't have to do anything else. And it's the same thing.
Now, a lot of people I've talked to, especially after coming out of the holistic space, don't believe that dogs should eat grains. They think grains cause inflammation, they think they're cheap, unnecessary fillers, and honestly, this couldn't be further from the truth. Grains have nutrients, they also provide fiber, they also make fresh and homemade dog food a lot cheaper for you and I'm here for that. And also, the research shows that dogs can thrive on varying levels of carbohydrates. So we're really not too worried here about grains in this family. I'm very pro-grain. All right, after that, we're gonna need a full pound of apples. You can use kind of any apple here. I got Honeycrisp. Now, with the apples, of course, we have seeds in them with not so great things in them, and we wanna pull those out. Grains can also help to balance the calcium to phosphorus ratios. I learned this from Dr. Crispus with Medicus. Interesting, Jay, that's something I didn't even think about. But that's absolutely, I mean, that would make sense. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different purposes that grains serve. And also think about this. A lot of people will say, oh, pet food companies add grains because it's just a cheap filler. Well, the definition of a filler is something that has no nutritional value. And why would a pet food company waste money adding an ingredient to pet food that literally does nothing? They would be wasting.
Oh, Aaron, you are just the person I was hoping to talk to. I talked to Dr. Conway. Charles, good morning. And I made a video specific for you, uploaded it to the Google Drive, and forgot to send it to you. So I'm just going to play it for you right now. If anybody else is wondering, Erin asked about using our recipes for a very high energy dog, and I reached out to Dr. Conway, and this was her response. I literally made you, like, let me show you. I made you your own Google Drive folder and everything. So yeah, personal sends, this is for Aaron. Hey Aaron, so Danielle just sent me a couple voice messages that I thought would be really good for me to just play and let you hear about active dogs and our recipes and what some options might be. Good morning, Aspo.
Hey, this is actually really interesting, and I think there's a way to go around it. I think what we need to do is first, you and I create some content, like truly educating people what an active dog is, and like when truly, like, what is a canine athlete, and when do they actually need to increase the calories, and then we can advise from there. So if the dog truly is an active, because like I don't know if you saw the response I had to the guy with I think a border collie or Aussie, who he's like, oh yeah, super active, and then turns out the dog only has 20 minutes of heart rate elevating activity a day. So it's actually moderate, it's not even high. So the dog will probably be fine on the calories as is. If not, and the dog is actually losing weight and didn't need to lose weight, which probably it did, because most dogs do, is they can just bump up to the next weight category, so another 5 or 10 pounds, and feed at that. And it would be okay. They won't, I didn't formulate, it's a good question. They might need a puppy recipe if they're really, really active and the dog can't handle the volume, but that's actually what I like about how we formulated these diets, is it's moderate that. So even if the dog needs more calories, we're not going to be having them consume a substantial amount more food or a substantial amount more vitamins and minerals that would be harmful to that particular dog. I hope that makes sense. Because here's the other cool thing about like metabolism nutrition is that if an animal truly does have a metabolic system that is more active than your average animal, their needs for pretty much everything increases. Like a true athlete has a higher requirement not only for calories, but for protein, for fats, for B vitamins, for any of the metabolites within the Krebs cycle, and any of the like electron transport chain and all of the energy generating biochemistry systems. So it wouldn't be inappropriate to feed a dog who is truly more active and needs more of all those things at an increased weight range.
Okay, that's really interesting. It sounds like she's basically saying our concern about, increasing the food and increasing the amount of vitamin D and vitamin A and all of that isn't really much of a concern, because if a dog truly needs more calories, they probably also need more of those micronutrients. So I would say increasing the weight class of our recipes would be totally fine. If you have an 80-pound dog, maybe try the 90 or 95-pound recipes. Let me know your thoughts. Yeah, I'm getting the same vibe as Charles. I think, Aaron, from what you have told me, you sound like the small percentage of people that has a true athlete dog. And from what Dr. Conway says, it sounds like you could absolutely try increasing the weight class. And then in specific situations, you might even need the puppy recipe for, growing dogs just because your dog is expending so much energy. Let me know your thoughts on that. I'm also, I'm going to email you. Let me make sure I don't dox you and share your email address. I'm going to send you the link to this email or this video right now, just so you have it. Okay, just send. Yeah, let me know your thoughts on that. That was a really interesting conversation with Danielle. I didn't expect her to say that, like, our concerns aren't really necessary because dogs would need more of everything if they need more calories, most likely. Okay, back to the video edit. Money if they did that. So I've never understood that. And you'll notice I'm not cutting these up into very small chunks. I'll show you why in a sec. I'm obsessed with this pork, quinoa, and apples one. Banks has been eating this for a couple weeks now, and I'm finally switching Harper and Cooper to it. Well, Harper today. And
sorry. Next batch, but I'm a fan. It's pretty cheap too. I mean, I probably spent like $25 on ingredients, $30 on ingredients for a week's worth of food for Harper. Now, the reason I didn't cut up the apples a bunch is because we're going to food process them and cut them up even more.
Also, I don't know about anybody else, but, we all hear, know, and see food trends with pets all the time and stuff. The human trend that I'm on these days is freaking fiber. I'm trying to eat so much fiber right now, and it's hard.
Now, our final whole food ingredient that we're adding along with the apples to the food processor, good old frozen Brussels sprouts. Can chicken be substituted for the pork in this recipe? We don't eat pork. Bishop, you can't do any substitutions with these recipes, but we have 24 different recipes.
So this is where I would add in.
We have 24.
A call to action. What I'm trying to do is any opportunity or any moment I mention the recipes, I want to give people the option to explore
different
those.
Recipes that you can choose from. So we have.
I didn't know this was turning into a content creation live stream as well, but here we are.
Chicken, pork, turkey, lamb, tilapia, salmon, venison, literally so many different protein options. We also have single protein recipes that don't use more than one protein. So if you just wanted to use chicken, you could use the chicken single protein recipe. Great question. So going in with some frozen Brussels sprouts, I need 1 pound 11 ounces. So 1 pound 11 ounces, so 27 ounces. And these are 12.
I participate in performance sports only obedience, but many other people around me participate in agility and they feed pre and a pro plan sport. None of them use hills for their sports dogs. Interesting, Charles. Why do you think that is? Cynthia, good morning. Welcome in. Thanks for being here. Does Hills just not have as many sport options? I have to lose 100 pounds and I'm doing a high protein, high fiber, low sugar, minimally processed food. So yeah, fiber can be difficult to do by itself. Absolutely. Especially when you think about how much they're suggesting that you get, which I think is 100% valid. I'm seeing things upwards of 40 to 50 grams of fiber per day. And this is a chia seed pouch, whatever. And it has 6 grams of fiber. Yeah. Whoa.
Apples. These Brussels sprouts are so annoying to try and food process because they get under the blade. Come on, you can do it. I sometimes struggle with this food processor.
funny little moment. We could zoom in on my face. Right, Hills doesn't cater to that market. Interesting. I wonder why. I mean, it kind of makes sense when you think about like the shows. Like Purina's the sponsor of all the big shows. Now, I guess I don't know that Hills isn't, but sorry, that's probably really loud. I don't know if I have those. I probably do, I guess. That's actually really smart. Break them down easier. I gotta do this in batches because I have too much for the food processor to handle, but the rest of that's just gonna go in. Looks like freaking guacamole at the bottom. So that is all of the whole food ingredients going into this recipe. Now, a lot of people ask me why I don't use things like organ meat, like beef liver, for example. And honestly, I think I have a little bit of a hot take. I'm not a big believer that dogs should be eating beef liver. I'm interested all of your thoughts on this because I had somebody comment on our video from yesterday, and I'll read it here in a second, but they definitely did not agree with this. Thank you so much. Yes, she is high performance, intense physical exertion, heavy mental focus, bite work, dock diving, swimming, and fast cat. Exercises several hours per day. Yeah, Aaron. You are in that that small percentage of people with true athletic dogs, I think. Yeah, of course, I'm always happy to help out. Now, let me explain a little bit. For the longest time, I was formulating our homemade dog food recipes, right? And like so many other people, I was using beef liver. Beef liver is one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. It has a bunch of different nutrients that dogs need to survive, so why not? But then when I was reaching out to veterinary, use as a treat or not at all? I'm okay using it as a treat, but it has to be pretty sparingly. Like, let me pull up a video we did recently. All right, where are you? Okay, literally, why can't I find it? I use it freeze-dried as a high-value treat. Yeah, Sarah, let me show you this video, and you can tell me what you think. BK Pets beef liver. I go to TikTok because they have such a better search engine. Yeah. What? Hello? Feeding your dog beef liver as a healthy treat or topper? We need to talk. And look, I get it. Beef liver is one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet, which is kind of the problem. If your dog is already eating a complete and balanced diet, whether it's kibble, raw, or cooked, they're already getting the vitamins and minerals that they need. Beef liver is extremely high in copper, and copper is one of those nutrients that builds up in your dog's body and can lead to serious liver damage. So how much are we actually talking about? A 40-pound dog should get no more than about 7 milligrams of copper per day, which means about 8 small pieces of freeze-dried beef liver already exceeds that. And that's without counting any copper from their actual food. So if you're gonna use beef liver, keep it rare and keep it small. Feeding your dog beef liver as it can be fed as a healthy treat, but like when you think about the fact that a 40-pound dog should get no more than 7 pieces of freeze-dried beef liver, and that's not even including the copper in their food, I start to get concerned. And when you'll probably see this later on as we keep editing this video, I talk about how when we were trying to find veterinary nutritionists to formulate our dog food recipes, I reached out to one here in Colorado at CSU, and she's board certified and everything, and told me I wouldn't recommend using beef liver in your recipes because we're seeing more cases of copper hepatopathy. So I am like, I think unless a pet food company uses it and can test every batch to make sure that the food doesn't have excess levels of copper, I don't know that there's a real safe way to do it. Let me know your guys' thoughts.
Nutritionist trying to get somebody to formulate new recipes for us. Before I actually found Dr. Conway, I was having conversations with this person from CSU, who's a board-certified veterinary nutritionist, and I was telling her about my recipes and that they use beef liver and stuff, and she told me that they don't recommend using beef liver in homemade recipes anymore. I mean,
What's that, Charles? What else are you thinking about?
I think maybe even in commercial dog food. And the reason they don't recommend using it is the exact same reason people love it, which is because it's so nutrient dense. But what's actually happening is beef liver can be so concentrated in copper, and if you feed your dog too much beef liver or like beef liver and a copper supplement, your dog can develop copper hepatopathy. And so I am just not trying to risk that. And I also think about this. People come up to me and they're like, why don't you use organ meat? Your recipe's not balanced without organ meat. And I say,
Charles, what do you mean by Hills has lower protein levels? Are you referencing like them not being for sport dogs?
okay, why would I use organ meat? And they say, well, because organ meat's some of the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. Well, that's interesting. It's almost like you're telling me I should use organ meat to hit certain nutrient levels, which to me bolsters the argument that quality pet food is about the nutrients, not the ingredients. And so if my recipe doesn't have enough copper in it, I can add a synthetic copper source, which is going to be way safer for my dog, way more consistent, and have very little risk of...
Yeah, Charles, maybe they just aren't interested in being any sort of like high protein or sport dog version, I guess. Maybe they're just like the science, the therapeutic, the prescription diets, all that stuff.
overdose because of the consistency. I don't know if there's studies or just demonstrations or what, but people have literally taken the same beef liver from one single cow and they cut it into different pieces and they send each piece off to the lab and it comes back with different nutrients. So it's like, how are any of these people using beef liver in their recipes trusting that the nutrients are going to be consistent every time? I don't know how you could trust that. Yeah, Charles, I don't know. It's just, it's so nutrient dense, and I get it, like that's super appealing. Hi, love. But it's also can be a problem. I don't think the holistic community is ready to have that conversation yet, though. Okay, we are all good to go here. Let's get this cooking. Now, when I start cooking this, I don't want to cook it on super high heat. My burner goes all the way up to 5. I'm putting this on literally 1. Like, our burner runs a little hot, but medium low is where I want to be because I don't want to get anything super crispy. But I do need a lid. Now, the reason I put a lid on is because there's a ton of nutrients in that cooking liquid, and I want to keep as much of that liquid in there as I can without so much of it steaming off.
One thing I forgot to mention yesterday is that a pot on the stove is not the only way that you can cook these recipes. You can cook them in a slow cooker. You would do it on low setting for like 2 to 4 hours, depending on how much food you use. Or you could do an instant pot on low pressure for about 45 to 60 minutes. So all different versions you can cook there. The only thing you want to make sure of is that it's low and slow and it's covered so you're keeping that moisture in there.
Gonna start the cooking process now. Oh, is that plugged in? Wasn't plugged in. We're not starting the cooking process. Bryce, pork liver is a very common primary protein source in a lot of high quality wet food like Royal Canin. I don't disagree with that at all. My question is, should pet food companies be using that? Regardless of who it is, because it's so variable. Now, I don't know, maybe Royal Canin is able to...
Came in late. Is this the same recipe from yesterday? Yes, it is, Melinda. We're just working on editing this video down to like 20 minutes to post it. Just kind of going back through, making our marks and everything, answering questions. And then my plan is to start reacting to the Rodney and Karen podcast after this, if you all are interested in that.
Test it more consistently, or...
The one they did with Rachel Fazzaro recently.
They have a supplier that has provided enough consistency that they trust it, I'm just a regular person. I'm not a vet or a scientist, but it's interesting for sure. I'm also waiting on some more supplements to get delivered. He said they should be here by 11. Oh, delivered already? I'll be right back.
No way. I just looked out there.
Yeah, okay, you guys are all
Sure.
interested in that. We'll definitely do it.
Gets a little
Has anyone seen it yet? Because I have not. I have not watched any part of it.
RC probably has an atomic absorption spectroscopy machine in every factory to check mineral levels. Holy cow, I don't even know what that is. That'd be sweet if they did, though. Okay, we got some fun stuff in here. Okay, so I ordered some new supplements for today. Bone meal, the Daily Vits by Now as their daily multivitamin.
I stopped watching their content a long time ago, so no, LOL. That's funny. I think I saw it. It came out a couple weeks ago, right? Yeah, I think like 2 or 3 weeks ago it came out. It was like, we were wrong about raw food, I think was the title. Which I have no idea what that's going to be about.
Vitamin. Calcium carbonate is the calcium source. Bone meal is also going to take care of some calcium, but phosphorus as well. Nordic Naturals, omega-3s, because all these recipes are packed with omega-3 fatty acids, and taurine capsules.
Also, a note to everyone else, we're trying to check and see if I actually added the calcium to Harper's food. Because we're not sure. Yeah, Sarah, you've seen it? Okay, I'm interested to see it.
For heart health. And chapsticks. I'm an absolute chapstick fiend.
I also want to know if there's ever any videos you guys see that you want me to react to, just keep them, mark them down, copy the link, and then when we do these live streams, you can email them to me and we can react to them.
My dog won't eat green leafy vegetables or seed oils. She's pretty picky. I can't imagine dogs evolving on foods they won't eat. She does get sardines and steak as well, and plenty of sun. That's interesting.
Yeah, you've seen it, Aspo? Without spoiling it, how was it?
Interesting 4x4. Will your dog not eat seed oils, or do you not want your dog to eat seed oils? And I'm curious why, because the research in the human space shows that seed oils actually result in better health outcomes than animal-based oils. Just because a dog didn't evolve to eat something doesn't mean it's not beneficial to them. They didn't evolve to go to the vet or get medications or have surgery, and all of those things can be very beneficial to them. Also 4x4, if you're talking about sardines, steak, and plenty of sun for vitamin D, dogs cannot get vitamin D from the sun. They need it from sardines, have some vitamin D, eggs, supplements. But yeah, unfortunately, if we don't have supplements in that recipe you were throwing out, that's going to fall into that 95% of recipes being not complete and balanced. And a lot of people say, well,
Supplements and vitamins question. Do you just add supplements and vitamins that are made for humans, such as crushing tablets, or only supplements that are in their pure form? I don't totally know what you mean, like what the difference between vitamins that are made for humans, such as crushing tablets, or only supplements that are in their pure form. I think all of these supplements are pretty much in their pure form. But yes, these are supplements made for humans that a veterinary nutritionist has plugged into a software and verified that it still results in complete and balanced pet food. I don't have any videos off the top of my head, but do you think you'd be able to do a review of Year's dog food via their website? It's UK-based fresh food. It's what I feed my dogs. Yeah, Amy, what I'm trying to figure out, so we have a new voting system on Fairbowl where you can vote for the next dog food review, but I haven't figured out a way for people to be able to plug in requests yet. So I'm just going to write down your request so I have it for later. Okay, got it written down.
Humans don't balance their food. Like, why are we doing that for dogs? And I think there's a few different reasons. Number one, humans are not a great indicator of eating a balanced diet because something like 90-some% of humans are deficient in vitamin D. Some are like 80-some% are deficient in vitamin E, and it just keeps going. Dogs don't eat.
I'd love to hear your thoughts about them now that you've gone more integrative. Like, what do you still like about them? What are you hardcore against, etc. when you go over the video? Sarah, are you talking about... Oh, you're talking about the Rachel. Yeah, the Rodney and Karen. Yeah, we'll go over all that. Amy, it's been a great food for us, but there's a few things with the website that haven't sat right with me, like how I caught them using AI to write their FAQs. Interesting. Yeah, we don't grade for AI on our grades, but we'll definitely look into it for you.
Of eating a balanced diet, because something like 90-some% of humans are deficient in vitamin D. Some are like 80-some% are deficient in vitamin.
Oh, we need stats here.
And I think there's a few different reasons. Number one, humans are not a great indicator of eating a balanced diet because something like 90-some% of humans are deficient in vitamin D. Some are like 80-some% are deficient in vitamin E, and it just keeps going. Dogs don't eat a variety of foods very often. A lot of times they eat the same thing every single day. So if they're going to eat the same thing every day, we should probably make sure that that thing they're eating has everything that they need in it because they don't get a chance to eat something different. Yes, seed oils like omega 6s are required for dogs to live. They literally have to have linoleic acid. Humans eat terrible. We need a regimented diet, truth be told. Yeah, we do. We need kibble. Also, I'm putting all this food in a bake.
Sarah says, wait, why is it bad to use AI for an FAQ? As long as the data is correct, that's the most important thing, right? Honestly, Sarah, it all comes down to personal beliefs around AI. I personally do use AI as a tool in our business, but I also believe that AI is like a really scary thing that I'm not sure where it's going to go, you know, and what it's going to do to humanity. So, yeah, it's hard. It's all personal beliefs and personal perspective, and I respect all of them.
Sheet. This is not like a normal step that you.
My opinion on AI is I don't treat it any different than I treat Google. If I use Claude or Gemini to look something up, just like I would do with Google, you got to verify that source and make sure that that's correct.
Need to do.
I kind of view AI as like a more advanced search engine, I guess.
I'm just trying to cool this down faster so I can get supplements in there.
Oh, coming off the edge?
But look.
Wow.
Boom.
We cracked the code.
That's what I'm talking about, baby.
Remember when we had it on like 3?
Yeah. Literally on 1. I'm gonna go run this out to the freezer real quick. Got that cooling. But
yeah, Sarah, there are definitely some raised eyebrows in various areas. I also think AI is wildly overhyped right now.
I do get it. Alright, that's hot. I need to not touch that. Uncovered, I'm fine with. Yeah, that's kind of my theory too, is like, if I cover it, it's gonna steam even more in there. It's gonna take longer to cool down. And I also only leave it in there for, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes. Just because I need it to not be ripping hot. Get it? Alright, that's hot. I need to not touch.
I'd be happy to provide with proof of them using AI if you need it, Bryce. Oh, I believe you, Amy. I totally believe you.
Is there an omega-3? Is there an omega-3 supplement brand you recommend? Is Native Pet okay? Native Pet's great. I'm a big fan. The actual omega-3s that we're using currently is this brand right here. It's Nordic Naturals. Not a sponsor or anything, just a big fan of the testing that they do. They have it in a nice dark bottle to prevent oxidation, and they have like real therapeutic doses. Like this is concentrated fish oil. Not a sponsor, just a big fan. Yeah, I would say right now the Nordic Naturals omega-3 Pet is my favorite supplement to give our dogs. It goes in their homemade food. If they're not eating homemade food and they're eating kibble, it gets added on top of their kibble. Tons of research for hip and joint health and osteoarthritis and all sorts of different things. By the way, I can give you a dosing guide too if you want that. This is from Danielle, Dr. Conway. So this is your fish oil dosing guide. So these doses.
Adding to your seed oil dog evolution point, there's plenty of other foods that people consider healthy for dogs that they did not evolve for, such as all the New World vegetables, fruits, and fish. Exactly. It's just a random argument people like to throw out when they see an ingredient that they don't like without realizing that they're actively feeding ingredients that dogs did not necessarily evolve to eat. So, Dogs evolved to eat protein and carbohydrates and fiber, and within that, they can thrive on many different foods.
Dosages, the teaspoons per day, are specifically in the Nordic Naturals dosages, but if you have a different one, you just need to make sure you get the correct daily EPA and DHA combined.
Okay. Food is completely cooled down now. So I'm gonna add it back into our pot.
Again, this is not a step that you necessarily need to do. You can absolutely just like leave it on the counter for a little, throw it in your fridge, whatever you think is the safest way to cool it down. Okay, so now we need to add supplements. So again, what I'm doing here is I am just going to our Fair Bowl recipe. I have all the...
I just checked and you did add calcium, assuming that's the vitamin and mineral you're looking for. 2 hour 36 mark on the stream from yesterday. Okay, that's really good to know. That means we should come across it in this video. Thank you, Amy. I really appreciate that.
Plugged in for my dog Harper at 35 pounds and 7 days.
Yeah, calcium is the exact vitamin and mineral we were questioning.
Then these are the supplements I'm adding here. To this recipe, I'm adding omega-3 fatty acids, bone meal as a source of calcium and phosphorus, calcium carbonate as our calcium source that doesn't include added phosphorus, taurine for heart health, iodized salt for both sodium and chloride as well as iodine. And no, pink Himalayan salt would not be better in this situation because I only need sodium, chloride, and iodine. And finally, a daily multivitamin. This is going to take care of vitamin E and vitamin D and manganese and copper and a bunch of different vitamins and minerals. Now, a lot of people are like, why do you use supplements and not just whole foods? Like, dogs don't need a bunch of supplements, and they actually do. Whole food diets alone often don't hit the right nutrient levels for an adult.
For future reference, you can search keywords and videos with captions via the description. Whoa. Just press show transcript and you can search the full transcript from there. That's awesome. I will definitely be using that.
Healthy dog. And synthetic vitamins and minerals help us keep it so much more consistent and safe for our animals versus trusting something like beef liver to deliver the copper, which a beef liver could have a ton of it, it could have very little of it, and who knows if the company you're feeding your dogs from is actually testing to see what the difference is. Next up, we have bone meal.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I will definitely tell Dr. Conway good luck on her test. I think she takes it in like 5 days.
It's going to be 5 1/4 teaspoons, so just under 2 tablespoons. Also, the supplements only make up about 5% or less of the overall recipe. Whole foods are still delivering your dog the bulk of those calories. 7 capsules of taurine. Now you'll notice with all of our different supplements here, well, we haven't actually gotten to the capsules and the tablets, but I am emptying them. I'm not just going to add these in and hope they dissolve. They don't always dissolve the best. That's something I used to do, and now I empty and crush everything that needs it. Can you use cheaper supplements if you find them? Daniel, I wouldn't recommend it because what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to verify that the dose you're getting is the exact same dose that your dog needs in these type of supplements. Now, luckily, you don't use a lot of these at all. Like, I feed my dogs all homemade food, and I just bought supplements for the first time in months. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 capsules of taurine. Like I said, I am going in with, I'm opening these and dumping them in. All right. Now 1 teaspoon of iodized salt. Again, this is not meant to make the food salty or taste better in any way. We are literally just trying to deliver sodium, chloride, and iodine in the most consistent and safe way we can. Dogs need salt to live, too. Every mammal needs salt, as far as I'm aware. 5 1/4 tabs of the Daily Vits vitamin. Do you feed them homemade daily? Yes, Tatiana, right now we do. So I'm making a batch, or a week's worth of food for our 35-pound dog.
I'm so grateful that I'm now able to feed my dogs a fresh food diet. They've benefited a lot from it. I've not had to worry about their weights for the first time in years. That's great to hear, Amy. And it's really interesting you say that because, of course, this might just be like survivorship bias, but I feel like a lot of people come to us saying they've been struggling to keep weight off with kibble or even commercial food, and switching to fresh, especially homemade, can help a lot with the weight loss. So obviously that's just anecdotal evidence, but you're not the first person that's been telling us that.
And this will get me through the entire week so I can feed it every day. And now with the Daily Vits, because these aren't capsules, these are tablets, I am crushing them in a mortar and pestle. Make sure they all distribute nice and evenly. Okay, nice and powdered. Daily vitamin goes in. And finally, 2 3/4 teaspoon of calcium carbonate. And now we gotta mix it really, really good. Like really good. I'm gonna spend a...
Anybody else that's had dogs who needed weight loss, what did you find that worked? I was in that boat. My biggest dog was 5 kilograms overweight on a weight loss kibble. He's lost all that and kept it off after switching to fresh. That's insane that they were on a weight loss kibble and then it was fresh food that got them down to the proper weight. I wonder why.
Couple minutes here. Now you can prep these in any container you want. Glass containers, stasher bags, whatever. I'm on a budget, and we're using Ziploc bags these days. I'm just making sure I'm not putting hot liquid in there. Or hot food, I should say. We can rotate them without having any tummy issues. Yeah, Hula Girl, once you get to like feeding your dog, and this is most dogs, once you get to feeding your dog a certain processed level of food, transitioning to the same processed level is not as hard. And what I mean is, like, if my dog is on kibble, going from one kibble to another probably doesn't require a slow transition, at least for my dogs. Going from fresh food to a different fresh food, same thing, probably don't need a transition. If I was going from kibble to fresh food or fresh food to kibble, I would then do a slow transition, because I feel like that's just a bit more of an aggressive switch to go from something that's minimally processed to something that's more processed. Not that the more processed thing is worse, it's just different for dogs and they might need some time to adjust to that. All right, now the question is where my Sharpie went. Oh, okay, so I already got one of those. Now, when I actually label my bags, what I do is I write the dog's name, so Harper up in the top right. You could also put the weight of your dog, so this could say 35 pounds instead of Harper. And then I put which recipe it is, so I know what the actual ingredients are, and then the date that I made it. So if I come back in May of 2026 and I see this, I'll know it's probably a little too long to feed.
2027, not 2026. I thought it was 2025 because I wrote 5/25, but it was actually May 25th. So ignore that.
Oh, May 2027, I mean.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Get the focus back here. Yeah, of course, Hula Girl.
The only thing I can point to is the carb content in the food. The kibble was much higher in carbs than fresh. I know I can't prove it, but it's the only thing I can think of. Yeah, that's interesting because like even our recipes are decently high in carbohydrates. Like a lot of them are kind of equal in terms of their protein to carbohydrate ratio. So I wonder what's going on.
Great question. Bags labeled. Also a little pro tip, if you're using Ziploc bags, you can get the ones that are designed for folding and filling. I'm a big fan. Flip them, flip the top inside out like that, and then it's like a little bowl that you can fill. Much easier. Now, a lot of people ask me, okay, I made 7 days worth of food. How do I know how much I actually need to feed each day? Well, with the way our recipes are set up, you make as many days worth of food as you want. So like right here, I made 7 days worth of food. And then I'm gonna split the entire batch evenly into 7 different containers. And now this will then tell me, okay, each one of these containers is 1 day's worth of food for my specific dog. How long can you freeze the food for? I'd say probably 2 to 3 months is a good rule of thumb. After that, you start to worry about, is the nutrition still the same? Does it still have all the nutrients that dogs need? So 2 or 3 months, and then I usually say like 3 or 4 days max in the fridge before it starts to go bad. So I'll make 7 days worth of food here, and then I'll put 3 in the fridge, 4 in the freezer. And I'm leaving all these open because if I get to the end and I still have a little left over, I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm just gonna go through and top each one off so that all of them are about even. All right, see, I'm almost out of food and I have 1 bag left that's gonna need a little extra. So I'm actually gonna go through and take some from the other bags to make sure it's all even.
Oh my gosh, Amy. You guys went in.
They must get excited over their food. They absolutely do. I'm convinced my dogs think I'm like the dog Gordon Ramsay just because I cook at home for them. All right, and that right there is 7 days worth of food. If you're watching this on the regular YouTube video, you can just check the link in the description below, and that will have everything that you need to get started making safe, homemade, balanced food that's formulated by a real expert. And that right there is your finished batch of pork and quinoa and apples dog food.
Okay, lovely. That should go live this week. Not that any of you will need to watch it again. Some of you have probably seen it twice already. Okay, is it time? Is it time to react to Rodney and Karen? Hi, Gupper. You're a sweet boy. Come up and say hi. Wait a minute if you can. I want to go make myself a cuppa to watch this with. Yeah, you got it. I'll get us all set up here. I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick. Aspo, I have watched it twice. Yeah, you're not gonna need to watch this video again when we post it. Good morning, everyone. I missed a lot of chats. I was thinking popcorn, but it's good to stay hydrated. The dog promptly following him. Yeah, literally our dogs follow us everywhere. Sparkle, we're about to react to a podcast that I'm very excited about. Oh, Daniel, per my question yesterday, asking if I can make my own ground pork, I used a calculator and found an easy way to make ground pork. However, the lean meat is 85.3%. Will this work for the pork recipe? Absolutely. The pork recipe calls for 84%. We're not going to stress over 1.3%. So I would feel totally comfortable with that. The dog promptly coming back with you. Yeah, they're all three here now. This is about to be fun. Yes, it is, Charles. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I have no ill feelings toward Rodney or Karen or Rachel in any capacity. I literally talk with Rodney. We text back and forth. We talk on the phone. So, like, none of this is, I hate these people, let's shit on them. This is just, like, general discussion about pet food and my own curiosity and verifying claims made and all of that stuff. So, without further ado.
Anderson Paak here to tell you, paying by bank could put your info at risk. Take Stacy.
Because this is the most important video that I will ever film. Because if you've ever worried about the food you feed your dog, about which vaccines to give your pets or which ones not to give, this video is for you. Because I have two of the most credible people in the space to talk about these topics.
First of all, I'm super excited to be here with you. We finally get to sit down. We finally get to do our sort of first podcast mind jam for pet parents. I hope everybody watches today. At the end of the day, the goal is to try to ignite or inspire people or the industry to be better, is it not?
That's what I think is a great point, and I think that's why I don't have any feelings toward any of these three people, because regardless of whether or not I disagree with them on certain topics, I believe each individual one of them loves dogs so much and is trying to do what they can to give dogs a better life, which is exactly what I'm trying to do. And we all kind of believe we're right, don't we?
And educate. In order to be better, you have to recognize that there's an issue or that you want to improve something. And I think part of this is just understanding as pet parents what we need to be doing to do the best we can. I think sometimes people don't even know that they could be doing better, or they're unsure why things aren't going well. So just helping people make better decisions because they have more information, that's my goal.
Absolutely. And I think my intention here too is to help pet parents make informed decisions that they feel good about. Mm-hmm. I want this to be a no fluff, science-based, actionable video, a guide where pet parents can take this to their veterinarians. Because I do want to give a quick disclaimer that we are not here to prescribe, treat, recommend. In fact, I want to encourage everyone watching this to take this video and share it with their veterinarians to inspire conversations so that we can work collaboratively with them.
When you start to move throughout the marketing of pet food, if you have a fascination in it, you see around the 80s or 90s where companies would differentiate pet food A versus pet food B based upon an ingredient. And, we vilified corn for so many years and it destroyed so many companies, and then birth was grain-free, and now we're back to this new term, nutrients over ingredients. Right? And there was a phase in life where it was ingredient, maybe over nutrient, and all of these marketing claims into food. What are you guys making of all this?
I don't know that I would say nutrients over ingredients is necessarily a marketing claim. In my opinion, it means that regardless of what ingredients you use, the most important thing is hitting the nutrient levels a dog needs. And this goes back into our conversation yesterday in the homemade food recipe about beef liver, and people saying, oh, you should use beef liver because it's so nutrient dense. We're after the nutrients. The ingredients are the vehicle that provide the nutrients, but the nutrients are what actually performs the functions in our dog's bodies. So I believe that it could be used as a marketing term. I wouldn't say that in and of itself is a marketing term, because most of the people I hear that from are not working for pet food companies. It's experts saying, we need to focus on nutrients, and many different ingredients can provide said nutrients.
It's darn confusing, right?
Yeah.
It's totally confusing. And I think part of it comes down to people's individual training. If they've been to college, or if they've taken chemistry, or if they've taken a nutrition class, we are taught about single amino acids and single nutrients. And so on paper, we're able to draw them. We know what they look like. We know how they interact with one another. And sometimes people just keep it on the paper, and you can formulate diets on paper and make it be nutritionally complete, and it's done. But does that formulated diet on paper act as a whole food would act in the body? So it's such a great question. In the human space, there's this drink called Soylent. Have you heard of this?
I have not heard of this.
It's this nutrition. It's for people. Dr. Marianne Nessel, this amazing, iconic human nutritionist that we have interviewed several times. She's this brilliant advocate for food in the human space. She told us about Soylent, and she said for busy, active people on the go, it's an all-in-one nutritionally complete liquid meal that humans can just drink. So you don't even have to eat. You can just drink Soylent whenever you're hungry. Has all your macros are ideal, vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids. You don't have to eat food. You can just drink this liquid beverage that's the equivalent of human food that's nutritionally complete. And so my question to her was, it sounds like pet food. She said, that's exactly what it is. It's just liquid, not crunchy. So I said to her, would you, as a human nutritionist, do you recommend that? And she said, only in worst case scenarios. For instance, there are some people who physically can't swallow. They have a peg tube, and we have these diets in veterinary and human medicine as well, that if you're in the hospital, we can feed you parenterally, we can feed you through a tube with a liquid diet. Are those liquid diets as good as real whole foods? And she said, of course not. And then the question is, why? So it comes back to this ingredients versus nutrients. If that liquid, or if the crunchy ball has all of the nutrients included, why isn't it the same as real whole foods?
I think it's a totally valid point to say that an all-in-one, like a Soylent type drink, is not as good as fresh whole foods. But I think that creates this comparison that humans are only eating fresh whole foods, and to go to Soylent would be a worse choice, which I agree with. But I don't think that's the world we live in. I think we live in a world where most people are overeating ultra-processed foods and overeating all these different things, whereas would they be healthier if they started replacing some of those ultra-processed foods that don't have a ton of nutrition with Soylent? My guess is probably, because at least they would be getting the nutrients that they need. They wouldn't be lacking in vitamin D and vitamin E. Would they be as healthy as if they were eating only whole food, fresh diets with all the vitamins and minerals that they needed? No, of course. But that's kind of like a utopia. That's not really the reality that we live in.
But science is starting to show that. In fact, you just found a brand new study that came out about food matrices and why that matters.
Yeah, it's a very intense conversation, and I can jump into it, but I want to get your take, because I know we both gave our quick spiels on it. Before I jump into that, how are you interpreting this? Are you interpreting this as a bad word, meaning Camp A can attack Camp B when it becomes this whole, look, this can actually move into any category. If you're having this conversation as a raw food feeder, am I talking about a nutritionally balanced diet versus sort of a prey model, ancestral type of feeding of way? Because yes, then that nutrient versus ingredient can be a problem there. Am I talking about it in the ultra processed food world? How are you seeing this as in your space?
I like that question a lot, because it feels like it recognizes the amount of nuance that goes into this conversation of nutrients versus ingredients.
Yeah, so I think I represent a lot of what we'll call 1.0 pet parents. It's like the pet parents that are curious, the pet parents that are aware that there's something that they want to do better. And I think what's really interesting to me, I was going to say this off air, and we didn't get to it, is that one of the shocking, most common feedbacks I get from my community is that they do not feel confident and good about the food that they feed.
Yeah.
And this comes from kibble feeders, raw feeders, everything in between. They don't
Human feeders, everyday feeders. I think that when I go to the
Yes,
refrigerator, am I eating
exactly.
everything that I should be eating? I think it's a common human global concern.
Exactly. And so I think that's where I
Yeah, Charles, I try to eat several whole foods with vitamin D in it, and I'm still deficient in vitamin D. Kenzie and I went to the doctor and found out we are both deficient in vitamin D, and she's been taking a vitamin D supplement for the last 6 months and is still deficient because of how much time it takes to get back up to a regular level. So that's why I think just saying like, oh, dogs should only be getting their nutrients from whole foods lacks so much nuance and context as to how they can actually get those whole foods and how consistent that is. Honestly, I would prefer human kibble so much more over Soylent. It seems depressing to drink your meal instead of sitting down and eat an actual meal. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely just like one of those human traits, but I totally hear you.
Come from is, you know, how do we help pet parents feel good about what they eat? And so for me, the easiest thing I can do is find ways to look at a pet food and figure out how is this a good food? Is this a healthy food? And so
I disagree with Rachel there, because if we go back and listen to what she's saying, she's basically saying that pet parents, no matter what they're feeding, don't feel good about what they're feeding. And she says the fix to that is to find out what foods are good and what foods are bad. And, you know, we do that with Faribault too. We grade them. But I don't know that that's the fix to making pet parents feel better about what they feed. I think the fix to make pet parents feel better about what they feed is to stop villainizing specific ingredients and stop fear-mongering. I'm not saying Rachel does this. I'm talking about the greater community here. But even pet food brands, like, stop vilifying other foods and processing levels and things that we don't have the evidence to support. And maybe then people will feel a little more comfortable that they're not feeding poison. Because even if we give a dog food an F, it's not poison. Would I rather a dog at the shelter eat an F-graded food or nothing? Of course I want them to eat that F-graded food.
It's a common human global concern.
exactly. And so I think that's where I come from is, you know, how do we help pet parents feel good about what they eat? And so for me, the easiest thing I can do is find ways to look at a pet food and figure out how is this a good food? Is this a healthy food? And so for me, I can say that I've gotten in the trap of kind of just looking into what the ingredients are. But what I've learned following both of you and your work, and many others, of course, is that ingredients only tell so much of the story, and nutrients are important. So then, as you said, there's this whole other shift of like, okay, well, only nutrients matter. And so now I'm in this world where, and I know a lot of others in my community can relate to this, where we know ingredients are important, but we also know nutrients are important. And my question is, why can't we have both? Why can't we have good ingredients? And I know that's kind of a controversial question, like what's a good ingredient? But good whole food, recognizable ingredients, and good nutrients. And that's where I am trying to figure out like what's right, what's wrong, and what's best.
It's all important. All of it's important, right? And it's, again, it comes back to the type of conversation that you're trying to have. Like, when you sit down with a first-time pet parent, you know, we discuss this all the time. I mean, the journey of food is so vast, and there's so many different communities to every single diet, right? So you have an ultra-processed food world, and you have a minimally processed food world, and now, of course, with the introduction of the NOVA food classification system, you can actually have a processed food world. And for the pet parent, that is too much. Like, even starting there is a lot, right? Because it starts with, well, when I say to you food, everybody sees food differently. I can go to your house, I can open your cabinets, and I can see like organic, humanely raised. Perhaps you eat meat, maybe you don't eat meat, you're a vegetarian. You come to my house and maybe you see a fruit roll-up. I don't have fruit roll-ups, but you may see fruit roll-ups. So the perception of how people sees food is
fuck
one
with fruit
challenge
roll-ups heavy.
when you're trying to relay information to people. Then you get into these other challenges where you're arguing within food philosophies. So if you start, let's just say you start in the minimally processed food world. Dr. Becker's whole career, and I don't want to speak on your behalf, has been about trying to relay what can happen when you take the diet into your own hands, which is very empowering. All of us want to do that. Who doesn't want to do that, right? Take the diet into your own hands. But because of the information you got, you're doing it incorrectly. Because of the information you got, maybe you're doing it behind a philosophy of, I want to feed a dog like a wolf, if you may. So I'm only going to feed you parts and pieces of something that you could have captured in the woods. this raises a giant debate in so many types of communities, right? I mean, you've seen it. People that are feeding maybe just duck heads, and to them that's a fully balanced diet. And now you can get into the argument of nutrients versus ingredients.
I do love the fact that we're in a day and age that we have enough science and we have tools that can help us make better decisions. But to your point, Rachel, with the 1.0 pet parent, those tools are overwhelming. Like, here's what's cool. We know basic minimum nutrient requirements for dogs and cats. We know it. We don't have to
I also, like, this is not anything against them. I don't love the whole 1.0 versus 2.0 pet parents thing, because I just feel like it pits pet parents against each other. Like, how am I not going to develop a superiority complex if I identify as a 2.0 pet parent over 1.0 pet parents? You know what I mean? Therapy, I guess, but...
The horrible nutritional experiments that they did for NRC to get the data to know how much selenium does a dog and cat need, how much vitamin D, how much vitamin A. We've done those and got awful experiments that we don't have to repeat because they're terminal. So they raised whole litters of animals and they specifically made those nutrients excessive and deficient and figured out what happened physiologically. So we know without a shadow of a doubt, bare bones minimum nutrient requirements for dogs and cats. We don't have to repeat those experiments in the kitchen. So when people say this is a balanced diet, and you can pop it in, these amazing, easy spreadsheets to show you, and you're like, no, it isn't. Then it comes back to, do you care about minimum nutritional requirements or not? So part of this, I think, is a personal decision. Like, do you care if you're meeting no nutritional requirements? Question number one. Some people and some food theories and beliefs say, I don't care. This is what I'm going to do. Nope.
What Rachel just said is pretty much my stance on pet food. I don't necessarily subscribe to there being good or bad ingredients, but there are ingredients that I prefer over others. That said, I wouldn't feed something like Origin kibble due to the high protein content with little to no moisture to compensate for that. It's just asking for kidney problems, in my opinion. Yeah, I hear you, Amy. I also subscribe to the camp of, like, there's not good and bad ingredients. There are just things that do different things. What does that even mean, 1.0 versus 2.0? My assumption is that, like, the 1.0 pet parents are the ones that are not as deep into this as most of us here are. They're the ones that, like, kind of just want to find a solid food. They're not really going super deep on it. They just want to know they're feeding something safe. Versus a 2.0 pet parent, from what they describe, is what I would imagine many of us are, or I would imagine they would describe us as 2.0 pet parents, which is people that are just digging deeper, that are really interested in nutrition, that are having conversations about this. But I don't think one is better than the other. We're not better than pet parents not as deep into this. This is just part of our interest. That's a good point that Karen said. It's crazy that people say no after receiving info that the diet is deficient. This is a really big thing in the pet industry that I feel like not a lot of people talk about, which is your individual risk tolerance. Because for me, I can sit here and say, raw food is the worst. Don't ever feed your dog raw food. But I also am recognizing that there are many raw food companies trying to make it as safe as possible. And you might feel like feeding a raw food from a reputable brand isn't as risky as I feed it. Neither one is wrong. That's just our difference in personal beliefs. So I agree. I think that's a great point. Yeah, 1.0 to 2.0 is kind of just like how deep you are, like Sarah said, as far as what I'm understanding. Because I believe that Rodney and Karen, they have their membership, The Scoop, and I believe they describe those pet parents as 2.0 pet parents. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure.
Problem. Your diet is deficient in these areas, and if you want to continue feeding it, you're aware of that, and then you can feed a nutritionally deficient diet. I have clients that say, I am going to continue doing that. That's their choice. It's heartbreaking for me as a wellness doctor because I know what happens when dogs are vitamin D deficient, and I know what happens when dogs are, calcium, when there's too much phosphorus in a diet for a kidney patient. I know what happens. So part of this is, do people want to make better choices based on new knowledge that we're able to have, or do they not want to make different or better choices?
I totally agree, Amy. It does. I don't think the intention is to pit parents against each other, pet parents against each other, but it feels like Republican and Democrat. Like, I don't know why we have to separate these things. I would imagine everyone is trying to do the best for their dogs. I'm a 2.0 pet parent, but not better than others. As Bryce said, I'm an Inside Scoop member. Sweetheart, Care Bear, do they call them 2.0 pet parents? Am I correct in saying that? But yeah, I think, like, you can identify as a 2.0 pet parent without thinking you're better than 1.0 pet parents. You know what I mean? Just like Sweetheart said.
Choices. So that's kind of question number one from a veterinarian is, if you have the knowledge, are you willing to make different choices? But to your point, Rachel, the question is, they don't even have the knowledge.
Yeah.
They don't know enough.
They don't know enough. And then with social media, of course, there's a right and a wrong way to everything, you know, and so it's wildly confusing. And I think the pet food world and the knowledge is still growing.
Totally.
So I don't know that anybody knows the exact right everything, and I think it's still evolving.
Even the pet food industry itself, Rachel, when that DCM thing came out back in the day, which now it's like hopefully been curbed with science, the pet food industry itself came out and said, hey, we just don't know enough about nutrition yet.
Yep. So true.
We just don't know. Like, we're learning every day. What we learned 30 years ago, today, may either be, there's some similarities, but with the way that science is evolving and we're learning, and then you got to couple that with the environment and how foods, you know, we talked about this a long time ago. Broccoli 50 years ago, when you were trying to balance a diet, Steve Brown says this all the time.
My gosh. We see it right now in the USDA nutritional database. The ingredients that have listed nutritional values, there's every food grown in the U.S. has a data spread. Yeah. You compare what date those nutrients were added, and then you submit broccoli now. It's like, oh my goodness. Yeah. And the nutrients are no longer in the foods that we thought that they were. 40 years ago, foods were more nutritionally dense, and they are not now. People say, what about organic? Organic is chemical-free or pesticide-free foods, but not necessarily always more nutrient dense. Foods were more nutritionally dense, and they are not now. People say, what about organic?
Nope.
Organic is chemical-free or pesticide-free food.
That's not true. Organic is not pesticide-free. No, organic does not mean pesticide-free. Organic farmers routinely use pesticides. The key difference is that they rely on naturally derived substances like copper, sulfur, and neem oil, rather than synthetic and human grade. But there are often times where organic pesticides are more toxic than inorganic pesticides, or they often have to use more organic pesticides than inorganic. So organic food does not mean pesticide free. It just means different types of pesticides. And a lot of times it doesn't mean safer either. I think it actually can mean less safe. No, you're okay. I'm just muting. I've learned from the inside scoop, and I'm learning from you, Bryce. I have no choice but to feed kibble with home-cooked food for dogs. I work, and it's what I can afford. Please don't feel guilty for feeding that. You're feeding 2 complete and balanced diets to a dog that you love. Fed is best. Your dog is lucky to have you. Yep, recently found that out about organic pesticides. Yeah, it does not mean pesticide-free. Chemical-free. The science part of my brain physically hurt when I heard that. Everything with mass is a chemical. You'd expect Dr. Karen to know that as a vet. I'm sure she does. I'm sure in her head she's referencing harmful and toxic chemicals. But I do agree. When it comes out as like chemicals, it's like a banana is made up of chemicals. We are made up of chemicals. I'm very skeptical about what other people say, scientists say. I've seen this in my field where people will, on the internet or in person, will say scientists in my field say something when no one does. That's the thing, 431. Show me the fucking proof. If you're going to tell me a big claim, Dr. Mike has the best quote I've ever heard. Big claims require even bigger research. Like, if you are coming to me and claiming something that the general body of research doesn't support, you have to come to me with so much evidence to support your case. Because if you don't have the evidence, how are you right and the rest of these giant institutions are wrong?
Foods, but not necessarily always more nutrient dense. They may have higher polyphenol values, right, and there's obviously benefits to not eating chemicals or pesticides.
Right.
Again, chemicals are in everything, and if you are eating organic food, you are still eating pesticides.
But that doesn't, just because you're eating clean, whole, fresh foods doesn't mean you're getting the same nutritional punch that you did 40 years ago at all.
How can we, I want to give some, we're talking about pet food, we're talking about pet stores. I want to give the audience some actionable tips.
Yeah.
Like, we're in the pet store. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with these 2 wonderful,
I hear you, Amy,
incredible pet health experts, most followed veterinarian in the world for good reason, for impacting millions and millions of pets, veterinarians, researchers. I know that in a perfect world, you would love this idea of DIY, fresh whole food feeding, using a formulator such as Animal Diet Formulator, it's what I use, to make recipes.
Okay, I have a little bit of personal beef with Animal Diet Formulator. Now, I have had some colleagues reach out to me with some concerns about the safety and efficacy of Animal Diet Formulator, because there's a big list of questions that myself and other colleagues have sent to them, asking them various things like, hey, have you ever created a recipe using your software and then sent it off to testing to make sure that it was still complete and balanced? And other questions like, how do you know when you cook a supplement that it loses this many vitamins and minerals? Like, what do you have to support this? And a list of like 10 other questions. And I sent that like 6 to 7 months ago and have literally not gotten the answers still. I'm kind of getting a little bit of a runaround. I'm being sent to other people. No one can get the answers to these questions. So then when you think about Animal Diet Formulator was created by Steve Brown, I believe. Steve Brown is the original creator of Animal Diet Formulator. Okay. Steve's Real Food is also made by Steve that owns Animal Diet Formulator, as far as I know. Again, I could be wrong about some of this, but I'm 99% sure. So Steve also owns Steve's Real Food. Who owns Quest Cat Food? Quest Cat Food is owned by Steve's Real Food. Okay. Quest Cat Food recall. Go Raw LLC. Who is that? I'm pretty sure that's probably the parent company that owns Steve's Real Food. Yeah. Okay. So recall of Quest Diet Cat Food. Why? Due to low thiamine levels. So low levels of B vitamins. So we have a software that's created by Steve, but we have questions as to the safety and efficacy and if it actually is producing fully balanced recipes. And then we have a cat food also owned by Steve that just got recalled for low levels of B vitamins. So my question is Quest Cat Food using Animal Diet Formulator to formulate their recipes? And if so, is Animal Diet Formulator inaccurate? And if it's inaccurate, is that what is resulting in this B vitamin deficiency recall? I don't know. I think we need some answers to some questions, and I have yet to get them, nor have my colleagues.
At home, which is now easier than it's ever been before.
But still expensive. Homemade, good quality organic food is the most expensive. Well, maybe commercially available organic human grade, one step higher, but it's hard. A lot of people don't have time to even prepare foods for their kids or themselves.
Yeah, a lot of people don't have time, but that doesn't mean it's like ungodly expensive either. So let me show you this. If you go to food reviews, and let's say we want to compare like a commercial food, like a farmer's dog, right? Farmer's dog compared to homemade food, you're probably still spending 30% or less or more on commercial food. Dr. Barbara Royal is also on their board. I remember during the Pet Food documentary, she boasted about how Darwin's didn't have any pathogens, Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria who. Yeah, and then if you go look up Darwin's recalls. The FDA has issued multiple advisories and recall requests for Darwin's pet food products due to contamination with harmful bacteria like Salmonella, Listeria, and E. coli. So that's the thing is it's not just automatically safe.
Fair, exactly. And so it's like, okay, we get that, right? There's ideal, but then there's reality. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how do we help those that are in the pet store right now watching this video, or they're going to the pet store after this? Mm-hmm. How do we say, okay, you're looking in the aisle, and we know that, and we know the value of adding fresh food toppers to improve the bowl, which we'll talk about. But how do we start and make some informed decisions on our pets' food? These are, I'm not talking about the brands, this is not about the brands, but I think what will be helpful is I think if we had like true experts who dedicate their life to researching pet food, pet nutrition, how can we look at these bags of food in the aisle and how can we make informed decisions? I do want to give a caveat that I recognize and acknowledge that a lot of what we see on these bags is marketing. And unless we get complete nutritional analysis, unless we are in the lab where the food
Is caffeine a pesticide? Oh, it's like, 431, you're right. Plants produce caffeine so bugs don't eat them. Crazy.
food is made or the factories, unless we're at the farms, we don't know everything. So I understand that. But I don't think that we're going to give value if we don't give some actionable tips. Like, what can we look at? What can we avoid? What are some red flags?
So keep in mind as we go into this that Dr. Conway, a veterinary nutritionist who's taking her board exams in 5 days, has said that there's no way to determine the quality of a pet food by just looking at the bag, because you get very little information about what's actually going on with the food.
So I want to start with looking at some of these bags and some of the claims that are on them. And one, what do they mean? Should we care? Do they matter? And I guess we should actually start with ingredients, because we kind of were on the ingredients versus nutrients.
I think you have to first start, though, with if your audience or pet parents don't know what AAFCO is, we have to start there, because our human food system doesn't have an AAFCO. And so we have to introduce AAFCO so that people are aware that, like, when we see chicken on a human food product, we have a vision of what chicken is. But our human food definition of chicken is not pet food definition of chicken, and we have to start there.
Nutritional facts that they're using in Canada to replace AAFCO, because they don't have an AAFCO in Canada, sorry.
Yeah, so that actually is a really important point. If you are listening to this information and you're not in the U.S., you don't have an AAFCO.
You don't.
Canada, it's in many, many countries.
You could be in Europe and you have a FEDIF.
Yeah, you do. So there are some countries regulate pet food differently than we do, and for the U.S., it's a private organization, the American Association of Feed Control Officials, and they have a big fat book of ingredient definitions, and they're single ingredient, line by line definitions of pet food ingredients are not the same as human food ingredients, and that's just really important, basic to understand. Number one, that AAFCO sets what those ingredients are going to be termed as and what they can constitute. So whether it's a chicken powder, a chicken meal, fresh whole chicken, they are all written in different ways that can just be chicken on the label. Point number two, I think that's really important, is knowing whether this is a feed grade or pet grade ingredient or human grade. The two big things you have to recognize is, do you want to feed human grade, which means approved and passed? It was the foods and ingredients were inspected and passed, or do you want to feed grade, which means it's not approved for human consumption?
And how would I know that? You got to call the manufacturer.
Yes, and there are some companies that are able to put, and you'll see on these labels, you'll see human grade. And if it's not labeled human grade on the package or the website, by default, it's not. So I think that that's a really good take-home message.
Let's keep in mind, though, even if it is human grade and labeled human grade, the human grade, the human grade term is not a quality of ingredients term. It's a supply chain term, which basically means an ingredient has to be handled in specific ways, transported in specific ways, and it's not necessarily more safe, it's just different. Also keep in mind that human grade is a self-verification process. So there's not really any body or organization going around ensuring that people who say they're making human grade food actually have the receipts to back up that they're making human grade food.
Right there is, if it's important to you to feed USDA inspected and passed ingredients, you need to see the words human edible or human grade on the package or on the website. And if it's not, it doesn't matter how beautiful the food is or how expensive, it's not approved for human consumption.
And I think that's awesome advice for your audience, is calling the manufacturer. That it seems unheard of. I go to the grocery store, I buy a product, I've never called the manufacturer in my life. Why on earth would I have to call the manufacturer if I went and just pulled a product off the shelf? It is important, because You're not going to get everything maybe on that label that you said, but it's a good starting point to where you could have that conversation with that individual when you've called the manufacturer. And if you feel comfortable, that's already a really good start that you started a relationship, right? Okay, I'm starting to learn here. I love that you brought up AFCO, the American Association of Feed Control Officials. So as a first timer, you're looking for AAFCO on the side of the bag. That is really important because if it's there, as Dr. Becker alluded to, at least you know that's a starting point that you're going to get the basics when it comes to A to Z for vitamins and minerals. I didn't know this. When I would go to some of like my dollar stores in Canada, I could pull a bag of kibble off the shelf and it would say on the bottom for supplemental feeding only. I was like, wait, what? In other words, it's not balanced. It means that you have to buy a different bag of kibble that has AAFCO on it. And then you could integrate some of the supplemental feeding into that to maybe reduce costs, but you couldn't feel it solely. And who would ever think of that, buying the package, looking for supplemental feeding only? In a lot of the economy shops, even like the little canned and tin products, you would be shocked if you turn it around. It says on it for supplemental feeding only, meaning you can't rely on this from A to Z for your nutrition.
That's a lot of the, especially like the independent raw brands, the smaller raw brands in the store. I think like Oma's Pride sells some supplemental feeding only recipes. As far as I know, though, most commercial dog foods these days are complete and balanced. Like Rodney said, he would pick up a bag of kibble that said for supplemental feeding only. I've never come across one of those. So maybe that is not as common anymore.
Yep. The other thing on the bag, in addition to, it's either going to say this food is nutritionally complete or for supplemental feeding.
Right.
It will say human grade. If it doesn't say human grade, it's not.
When it comes to human grade,
I personally don't care if it's human grade or not, because human grade does not mean it's better quality ingredients. Two ingredients from the same source could just go through different supply chains, and one is human grade and one is not. That being said, I don't think it's bad to feed human grade.
I get a lot of feedback that, well, human grade is just a marketing term to make us feel good, and that it doesn't really matter if it is or isn't human grade. But my understanding is the difference between human grade and feed grade, which is what most kibbles are, is pretty vast.
It's massive, Rachel.
Okay.
It's massive. And you're either USDA inspected foods that go into the human food chain, which is then, of course, human grade pet food. You're made with those clean meats that are inspected and would hit the grocery store.
It's wrong to insinuate that human grade is clean and feed grade is dirty. That's not just an all-encompassing fact.
Or not. And if foods get rejected from the grocery store for human consumption, they go into pet feed.
Just remember, some foods get rejected from the grocery stores because the produce isn't pretty enough. And so that gets put into feed grade ingredients that our dogs and cats eat.
Animal feed, actually. Chickens, everything non-human gets.
Yeah, Charles, I've seen that AFCO has a definition of human grade, but everything I can from everything I can see, it's still like on the company to prove that it's human grade. There's not anyone verifying it. It's like, I think it says something like it will be the manufacturing firm's responsibility to ensure they produce in a facility designed for human consumption, something like that. CFR, it's like 21 CFR 117, I think is the statute.
Feed grade ingredients. Quality is vastly different between feed grade ingredients and human grade. Enough so that, and I am a USDA licensed meat inspector, I will only feed human grade ingredients to everything in my family, 2- and 4-legged, because I know what feed grade ingredients look like. Now, there are some excellent quality feed grade ingredients. There are some. But there are many that aren't, and there's no discerning. There's no way to tell on a label, like byproducts. Some byproducts are amazing, and some byproducts are awful. And
I mean, some raw foods are amazing, some kibbles are amazing, and some kibbles are awful. I don't think that means we should make a blanket statement of don't feed byproducts or don't feed grade food because some people don't do it well. There are human grade foods that are not formulated by experts. There are human grade foods that have not been tested. There are human grade foods that are recalled for salmonella and listeria and E. coli all the time. So I am just never going to be of the belief that food is automatically better because it's human grade.
There's just no discerning it. So if you are looking for the best quality of raw ingredients going into pet foods, you will pick a human grade pet food.
It's hard.
I think that's too big of a blanket statement to always be accurate. There's no way that all the human grade ingredients are always better than the feed grade.
This is hard because I see it all as ultra processed food, and I'm very vocal about. I'm not the biggest fan of ultra processed food. I do like the fact that you brought up feed. The incredible Susan Thixton says that even when you call it dog food and cat food, it's still marketing, and you're doing what the marketers do, because when chickens eat, it's not called chicken food, it's chicken feed, right? When pigs eat, it's not called pig food, it's called pig feed. And because animals, dogs and cats, are classified under that bubble, why are they the only ones that we call food? Well, marketing, right? But to go back, what am I looking at when I look at the ingredient label? So my lens is going to be completely different than a lot of people's lenses. I was a massive fan of Hill's Science Diet. I drank the Kool-Aid. I think I had mentioned earlier, I started with my cat with grocery store. I moved to veterinary line foods. As a 20-year-old kid, I really struggled to make money. I had 3 jobs, but I spent all I could because I wanted to feed my cat the best. Flash forward to 2007. Anybody that was part of the pet food massive recall, the scandal, my veterinary line food that I was spending god-awful money on failed me. I was promised the protection of science. I was promised the protection of research. I was promised the protection of every bag being inspected one by one. And my cats...
And you believe that?
And I believed all of it.
Yeah.
I don't believe that the company was malicious. I think the marketing got away with all of the promises they made to us and all of the money that we spend on science and research and studies. I'm not saying that they don't, but as a pet parent, I'm glad that you did that, but the protection of my animal comes first. I have my cat, I love that you're doing studies and research, but do not harm my animal if I'm buying your product.
I think this is very valid for Rodney to have these ill feelings toward Hills and these big kibble companies. I think sometimes where it gets taken too far, though, is by saying that his one case of a very unfortunate recall that harmed and I think even killed his animal means that the company is always bad and no one should ever feed them again. I think there's this idea that if a company has a recall, they're automatically bad and you shouldn't feed them. But we're kind of all humans here. Recalls are bound to happen. Again, I don't want to take anything away from Rodney's experience because I cannot imagine losing my pet to a food that I trusted. But I don't think saying I lost my pet during a specific recall with this brand, so no one should ever feed this brand here, is a real sound scientific way to go about it. Because there are raw foods that are killing animals. There are, kibbles that have killed animals. It's not specific to one brand or one type of food. Throughout all of these mistakes and recalls and errors, we learn more and we can do better. And I think his animal was in the melamine recall back in 2007 or 2008. As far as I know, that has not been a concern in any capacity since. Again, I haven't completely verified that information, but I haven't heard melamine in any capacity since that.
And in 2007, the melamine scandal that had happened, it obliterated my cat's kidneys. He survived, but he did not survive without damage and a blow to his kidneys. And it happens again and again. I mean, it's easy for Hill's Science Diet to come out and say, hey, look, we messed up. We're not going to do that again. We promised, right? What happened in 2019? It was overshadowed by COVID. If COVID had not come in, it saved. I think
he's talking about the Hills vitamin D recall.
In terms of media, what happened to Hill's Science Diet again with the vitamin D scandal, the vitamin D issue. When you're dealing, for me, and the reason why I'm highlighting all this, because I am getting to a point, and it's because when I look at the labels on the back, I'm looking for the number of synthetic ingredients that are in there to balance the diet. To some, it's not important. It might not be scarred because they can say, well, that's important. You need that to balance the food.
They're nutrients, right?
They're nutrients, right? Because it's all about the nutrients. Nutrients are important. But how are you delivering the nutrients to me? In an ultra-processed food type of way, in a whole food format? You can eat a carton of eggs, or you can feed your dog a carton of eggs looking for vitamin D, and you will make them sick, and you will give them diarrhea. But the odds of them dying is going to be difficult. Mm-hmm. I think we could agree on that.
Yeah, but the odds of them being harmed by a vitamin D deficiency are also high.
I'm sure there could be a threshold if I'm pumping a tube in with eggs. Look, let's just talk about feed your dog as much eggs as you want. I don't recommend it. I'm not saying do it. But the challenge becomes,
Your point is, real food doesn't kill
You
animals.
can't kill an
could
animal.
Get vomiting diarrhea.
But now
That's not true. We have been talking about this with beef liver and this copper hepatopathy issue where dogs can literally overdose from too much copper in beef liver. You can overdose and die from drinking too much water. People have overdosed and died from drinking carrot juice. So to say that whole foods cannot kill you is literally not true at all. Let's just do a little verification. That's just what I do sometimes when I question myself. Can you overdose and die on whole foods? So it says, while it is technically possible... Okay, hold on. Let's find a resource here that we can actually trust. No, I don't want Whole Foods, the store. So yeah, of course, I don't know these resources, live science, I haven't verified that. It seems like it's, of course, harder to die from whole foods, but I don't think that you being able to die from a synthetic vitamin and mineral means that we shouldn't use synthetic vitamins and minerals or that they're bad. Dogs have died from improperly cared for raw food, and we still can recommend safe versions of raw food. It's an emotional conclusion, but I can understand why you feeding fill in the blank thing and then ends up hurting / killing your animal will not have you feed it again, regardless of how much they put in protections after the fact. I totally get that, Sarah, and I think that is a 100% valid personal choice for Rodney to make. I just don't think we can say this harmed my animal, so no animals should ever do this. And also, of course, when Hills has recalls, they're a bigger company. It affects more animals. That's very unfortunate. But that doesn't mean that kibble is more dangerous or that whole fresh foods are safer just because of that fact.
I look for vitamin D through synthetics on the back of a bag, a la Hill Science Diet, who made a guarantee and a promise to people that every single package and bag and can is inspected before it leaves the door. And arguably, there were millions of cans that were recalled back.
Yeah.
Of course, kibble. Hills is a big company. That doesn't mean it's recalled more often than raw food or it's more dangerous. It just means when a recall happens, if it's a bigger company, more animals will be affected.
I can understand
it wasn't just one lot.
If you missed one can, you made me a promise that you were going to inspect everything before it came up.
That is a good point, though. If they're making promises that they're inspecting these things and they're running test and hold and doing all this stuff and then it slips through, the question becomes like, okay, who fucked up? Like, where did you mess up in your process? I think that's very valid because we talk about claims a ton. And if you make a claim, you need to back up that claim. It's the same thing as like some of these raw food companies that say they have test and hold procedures where they won't send out any food until it's been tested for harmful pathogens and bacteria. And then a food comes back positive with listeria. If a dog dies from Whole Foods, though, how is that reported? It's not like it's a kibble company where they report to the parents directly versus something like E. coli outbreak for regular food. You're absolutely right, 431. It's not recency bias. There's like a bias, like a reporting bias where animals dying from Whole Foods, how often do you actually hear about them? It's not like it's a kibble company where they report to the parents directly versus something like E. coli outbreak for regular food that harms the dog but was never correlated with dog's death because it was not diagnosed, because it was not designed for dogs, so it was not reported. Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's a lot of different factors that go into this versus just being like Whole Foods good, ultra-processed synthetics bad.
Your quality inspection. So now you've gone back on, if you've gone back on that promise, what are other promises that I don't know about that are happening?
True.
And look, same thing happened in 2019. I mean, you could just Google it. Allegedly, thousands of animals died because too much vitamin D was put into the food and it damaged animals. So my take on food is I am damaged by synthetics. So is it possible for me to...
But that melamine issue wasn't a synthetics issue. Melamine, I don't even think that's how you recall or how you spell it. Melamine and cyanuric acid, kidney failure. Yeah, right here. Initially, the recalls were associated with the consumption of mostly wet pet foods made with wheat gluten from a single Chinese company. So the 2007 melamine scandal had nothing to do with synthetic vitamins and minerals. It had to do with wheat gluten. And if we apply the same logic of like, oh, there was a vitamin D recall for synthetics, so no one should feed synthetics, we would say no one should eat foods with grain or gluten in them because of the 2007 melamine scandal. And so that's why I don't think blanket statements like that work.
Find a balanced diet that can be synthetic free. That's where you start leveling up in food adulteration and processing techniques.
I think you might want to go back and just explain what you mean by synthetic.
Yeah, so when you are formulating ultra processed food, because of the multiple steps the food has to go through, you have multiple heat steps. First of all, to run the extruder, the extrusion process,
Which is how kibble is made.
which is how kibble is made, those foods that go in there typically don't go in. There are categories, we've talked about this, where you could sneak a fresh ingredient or two in the machine, but generally they go in as powders, food powders first. Those food powders are already ultra processed because they were made in either a rendering facility, somebody who takes fish byproducts, lamb byproducts, chicken byproducts, and makes...
And byproducts are organ meat and various things like that. Remember, AFCO says that byproducts cannot be hooves or skin or fur or hair.
Them into a food powder, aka a meal, a chicken meal.
And think about like chicken meal as like protein powder. It's actually almost like full spectrum protein powder, because what they're doing is when he talks about rendering it, they're cooking the moisture out of it, because kibble is a dry food and it can't have a ton of moisture in there.
A animal meal product. That is already an ultra processed food product that comes with end products, meaning like advanced glycation end products and things that can harm animals. This is a little high.
And here's the thing. I think advanced glycation end products are one of the valid concerns about processed foods. But Rodney and I recently talked about a study on AGEs that tested canned food, kibble, air-dried food, and gently cooked food, so like fresh food. And it found consistently that kibble ranked third lowest in the amount of AGEs, and canned food actually consistently ranked above it. So AGEs are not like you cook the food so you're going to get a bunch of AGEs, or kibble has a bunch of AGEs. It depends on the processing method, and it seems like kibble is actually one of the lower amounts of AGEs versus something like canned food and even air-dried food.
But however, the more ultra processing that you put on food, the more that you can damage.
Yeah, I hear you, Sparkle. The thing is like my issue sometimes with Rodney and Karen's message is it doesn't always line up for me, because it seems like Rodney is demonizing ultra-processed food because of AGEs, but we also talk about this study that shows that kibble is just behind gently cooked fresh food in terms of the amount of AGEs, at least from this one study.
Damage those sensitive vitamins and minerals that were found originally in that whole food. Now, when it comes out on the other end, it's up to the board-certified animal nutritionist to then rebalance it before he puts it out into the world, and he can do that with a synthetic vitamin mineral mixes.
Yeah.
Those were what were tainted for me in 07, flash forward to 2000.
07 had nothing to do with synthetic vitamins and minerals. It was wheat gluten with the melamine.
I thank God I was not part of that, but I did watch that happen again. And I think we will keep watching it happen in the future, because machinery can fail and these things can happen. And I'm not willing to risk my animal for that. So I've become advanced on that. So as a first-time pet parent, when you're looking at the back of the package and you see synthetic line after synthetic line after synthetic line, that usually can show you the rigor of ultra processing that food had to go through.
I don't think that's true, because the farmer's dog uses synthetic vitamins and minerals. Just Food for Dogs uses synthetic vitamins and minerals. Fresh Pet uses synthetic vitamins and minerals. Raw foods, does Darwin's use synthetic vitamins and minerals? Not recall. Yeah, proprietary vitamin and mineral mix. So how are all these pet food companies using synthetic vitamins and minerals to help balance their food, but somehow synthetics are only for kibble companies because they've cooked all the nutrients out of dog food? It doesn't really make sense. It's almost as if people use synthetic vitamins and minerals because whole foods alone can't usually reliably cover everything. I mean, I think I've even talked to Rodney and like other people in the raw feeding space that it's really hard to get things like vitamin E from whole foods. He just said you can feed your dog a bunch of eggs, they're going to have a really hard time of getting vitamin D out of it. So synthetics are not a kibble specific thing, and I don't think synthetics are the issue. The issue was not that Hills uses synthetic vitamin D. That synthetic vitamin D has been supplying millions of dogs the vitamin D that they need every single day for years. The problem was that too much of it got used. So that's not like a synthetics issue, kind of, like not a synthetic specific issue.
In order to
Yeah, Sarah, I also think that the majority of commercial fresh uses synthetic mixes. We use synthetic vitamins and minerals in our homemade recipes.
balance it. So we have now foods, dry foods, because maybe today we're going to talk about baked and other categories, where the adulteration is less, therefore the synthetic vitamins and minerals are not as required, and you can still balance the product, and you can still protect yourself from a potential harmful effect that happens.
But avoiding synthetics doesn't protect you from Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria. It doesn't protect you from deficiencies because the food that was used uses a formulator that's not reliable. It's not a blanket protection. Would it have protected people from that specific vitamin D scandal in 2019? Sure. But does that mean that they automatically would have been healthier the rest of the time? No, absolutely not.
Happening.
Yeah, I think that's what's really interesting in the category of dry food, because I know that, ultra-processed kibbles are not your favorite, but I also know that you wouldn't want anybody watching this to feel guilty or shame for feeding a kibble. I know that about you.
Absolutely. You are where you're at, and you can look. It's you. If you sat anybody down, I don't think any logical person would ever say to you, if I said, I'm going to feed you a whole, fresh food, minimally processed food diet, fully balanced, fully protected, A to Z, or I'm going to feed you an ultra-processed food diet that they're going to match nutrient-wise, okay? But one is coming from minimally processed, the other is from ultra-processed. Nobody's going to, if you are uneducated and you are not following current science, brand new study published in Nature versus the comparison between ultra-processed and minimally processed, that it's not just about the nutrients or the ingredients, it's about the processing of the food. How is that food being processed? If you are not looking at that, then you don't care about science and you are uneducated.
That, to me, is quite aggressive and honestly kind of offensive to people. So he's basically saying that if you offer to somebody a minimally processed food and an ultra processed food that has the same nutrients and everything, that only educated people that care about science are going to choose the minimally processed one. Really? What about people that don't have a fridge or freezer? What about people that travel a lot and can't travel with their fresh food? What about shelters that just need dog food? This is kind of the thing, is like, Rodney and Karen will say, oh, we never want people to feel shame about this, but then go on to say that if you don't choose fresh food over ultra processed, you're uneducated and don't care about science. I don't know. I think that's quite offensive.
Because there's so much research that talks about it. So, but you can't guilt somebody into the bracket of where they're at. If I only have $1 in my pocket and I can already afford this food, and you have to start ultra processed, then learn some of the tricks in marketing that hopefully today that we can highlight on, and go from there. So yeah, thank you for saying that.
And we also tell everyone we meet, no, feed the best quality food you can afford to feed. But to your point, for a brand new pet parent, how do you choose a best quality food?
Yes.
It's overwhelming, and there's so much confusing information. So part of this is never bashing people for their choices, never bashing people for what they're doing currently, and also, most importantly, forgiving ourselves and not having guilt for ourselves for our choices that we've made previously that we just didn't know how to make better choices. We need to let ourselves off the hook and certainly not attack each other for what we're feeding. But within any food category, Rachel, there's good, better, best, and there's average, really bad, and oh my goodness, don't feed that. Within every category. So whether it's dry, extruded, freeze-dried, dehydrated, gently cooked, baked, all of those different food categories have ways that we can help pet parents make better choices within that category. And then if you're looking to improve overall health, you would potentially, as Rodney suggested, just like our human physicians and nutritionists, pediatricians are saying, if you want to improve your overall health, science is indisputable, you're going to eat less processed food and more real whole food. So if
I don't think that's necessarily true either, because I myself am somebody who probably eats relatively well 60 to 70% of the time. And when I eat, I am eating, you know, various things. Like I like Chipotle, and sometimes I eat fast food, and I don't eat a ton of fiber. Now, if I add a fiber supplement, which could be considered ultra processed, my health greatly benefits from that fiber supplement. If I add in a bunch of meat, which is whole foods, that doesn't really do much for my health. So I think that my big theme that I have issues with is the blanket statements of like, you are better off eating whole foods versus ultra processed. That's not true the entire time in any capacity. I dove down the rabbit hole at one point, but now I'm back to feeding kibble and canned from major player. My labs live to 14 and a half and nearly 14 on ultra processed food, vaccines, etc. That's the thing, is people claim, oh, my dog lived to 15 on raw food. Yeah, well, dogs live to 15 on kibble too. So shut up, I guess. Not you, Caroline.
If you're capable of moving from an ultra processed food category to a less processed, that's a great step in the direction of health. But if you aren't, and if you're going to continue feeding ultra processed food, how can we help you pick the best ultra processed food?
Right. So I think to kind of summarize what you were talking about, synthetics, I think kind of what you're saying is, in an ideal world, we have a food that's formulated with primarily, if not all, just whole food ingredients, and getting the nutrients from those whole foods, because then it's really difficult to have these toxicities from real whole foods. And what's interesting, what is kind of
which again is not true. We've talked with veterinary nutritionists who advise against using beef liver because we're seeing more diet-related copper hepatopathy.
exciting in the kibble category, not even kibble, the dry food category, kibble, air dried, dehydrated, is that we are seeing foods that are complete imbalance, that are using less and less vitamin synthetics.
So exciting.
It's so exciting. And so I think when I'm looking at these bags of food, I think if we just go to some of the basics, some of the things I know I look for, and you tell me, is this wrong, is this right? I'm looking for some named meats in the beginning, you know, beef, chicken, things like that. What are your thoughts on meat meals, meat byproducts, chicken byproducts? And that could be a whole separate video, but are you absolutely not, or are you, it depends? What's an easy way for me to look at that and make a decision?
As I mentioned, there are some byproducts that are amazing, but because AFCO doesn't differentiate categories of byproducts, what types, where they come from, you know, animals going into rendering plants to make rendered meat meals, I would recommend to, if you can, because we're unable to judge the quality of the byproducts, you just don't know. There can be heavy metal issues in byproducts, there can be contaminant issues, the nutrient status is all over the board. There's just a lot of unknowns with byproducts because it's a little bit of everything, and especially the nondescript meat meals, where it could be literally any species, and if you've read the research when they look at DNA found in pet food, woo, it's a rainbow of DNA. And that comes in those meat meals because it's literally any, not just mammal, any animal that is dead can be rendered and turned into meat meal that can go into pet food.
I don't disagree with her. I definitely do have an issue with the more generic terms, but more from a perspective of allergies. Like, if you read something that says poultry byproduct, but you know your dog has a deep chicken allergy, you don't know if that's going to be duck or turkey or chicken. So I do get that. I think anecdotal shouldn't be capped on heavily because anecdotal will validate both sides here, as Bryce pointed out. Yeah, anecdotal evidence is kind of no different than stories. Everyone has a story. Everyone can tell a story. That doesn't mean that that's true or applicable to the masses. And that's why evidence is so big to us, is because if anecdotal evidence is mainly stories and everybody has an opinion and everybody has anecdotal evidence, what do you trust? You have to trust the tests that have been ran with variables controlled for. There's also a selection bias on people who feed raw food because since they're focused on improving their dog's health, they are more attentive on getting dogs good exercise and healthy weights. You're absolutely correct, 431. There's like this idea that people who eat better are automatically healthier, but people that eat better are also probably focused on other areas of their health, like movement and going to the doctor and running labs and all sorts of different things. Selection bias is the word I was looking for. Thank you for commenting that.
So meat meals is that nondescript kind of cutoff zone where I would say if you can afford to feed a food that if it's going to have a meal, this dehydrated rendered meat powder, try and have it list a species like chicken meal or lamb meal.
That being said, though, my dogs don't have any allergies, so if I see poultry meal, I'm not concerned because I haven't identified any protein that my dog can't have.
Ideally, it would be best to not feed any meals at all because it's this ultra processed dehydrated protein, and it would be
I'm
better
not afraid of
and have
dehydration,
less potential chemical
personally.
byproducts, as Rodney was mentioning, so less of these high heat unwanted tag-alongs from the processing itself if you were to feed whole meats. So meat meals are something that the pet food industry uses a lot to increase the protein content.
Okay, perfect. The other thing I look for is in the guaranteed analysis.
You know what else meat does is it helps make food more accessible to pet parents. And like Karen just said, it delivers extra protein, which dogs need protein. Protein is great for dogs. And it's oftentimes cheaper than buying fresh meat straight from a supplier. But it all started with fresh meat. So byproducts and meat meals are definitely one of those more subjective things because I do get a lot of Karen's concerns about them being generic and not explicitly named. Her and I are on the same page of like pet food companies should be required to be more transparent than they currently are.
Increase the protein content.
Okay, perfect. The other thing I look for is in the guaranteed analysis. I personally look for a food that has 25% or higher. That's something I think I learned from a video of yours many years ago on the protein percent. Now, I understand and recognize that doesn't tell us the whole picture by any means, because we need to know how much protein is coming from actual animal meat. But what I'm loving that I'm seeing from brands is that there are some of them, if they're not sharing it on the bag, they are answering and sharing the actual percent of protein from animal meat. So I love to see it in like the 87, 90% or more. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I'm also very thankful that we have companies intentionally telling us where their sources of amino acids are coming from.
Yes.
And it's not that plant-based amino acids are faulty, but the fact is there's scavenging carnivores, whatever category you want to put them in, they have an essential amino acid requirement that is impossible to meet with plant proteins unless highly, highly, highly supplemented with synthetics.
I don't necessarily disagree here. I'm not of the camp that like you need a crazy high protein food, but I'm also not of the camp that dogs should be eating vegan food because whether we have research to support this or not, my personal belief is dogs have at least some requirement for animal-based nutrients. Too high protein and too high fat is not necessarily good for senior dogs. It's not good for any dogs, too high of anything, honestly. Meat can't literally refer to any species either. According to AFCO, it must come from cattle, pigs, sheep, or goats. Any species other than that must be specifically named. Interesting.
And then it comes back to, are you a fan of synthetic nutrients, feeding your animals a food that is synthetically enhanced with all of the man-made, lab-made nutrients needed to create a perfect protein? And there's a whole category of ultra-processed pet foods that think that that is A-okay. Me, as I'm a holism nutritionist in the sense that I do think that animals evolved eating biologically appropriate foods in their natural form. And in the last 150 years since pet foods have come about, I don't think that they have evolved to the point to just eat lab-made nutrients and use them in a way that their microbiome is fully adapted to for longevity and health span.
And when you say biologically appropriate, there is a small subset of people that for some reason think you're saying wolves. Where we've discussed
Dogs are not wolves.
Where we've discussed this marketing, I think that there's a...
Biologically appropriate is one of those terms that, like, from a science perspective has no real meaning. It's not regulated or anything. But I think when most people use it, they're referring to, like, if a dog evolved eating protein and carbohydrates and fats, they should probably continue eating protein and carbohydrates and fats, which I agree with.
A subset of people that are just not in the know, that for some reason when they hear the word biologically appropriate, they assume that you're talking about a wolf.
Yes,
right?
And so dogs are not wolves. And the other subset of a different vein, a micro niche within the pet feeding space, is biologically appropriate. There's this very bizarre kind of growing trend, not backed by science, to not feed any low glycemic plant-based roughage, which dogs and cats need. If you deny cats fiber, there's this strange new thing where people think fiber is optional. And you talk to any board certified, you talk to anyone with a nutrition degree and they're like, what? How is this happening?
That is so true. So many people think you can just feed raw meat and that's what dogs should eat. Good luck with your dog's anal glands and poops, not giving any fiber. One of the issues I do have with kibble is the minimum maximums. Like if the recipe has 1.1 phosphorus and the optimal is 0.8, that's an issue for me. I'm just bringing up random numbers, by the way. Hills is good about doing optimals. Yeah, I hear you, Sarah. That might be more of a systemic issue because AFCO doesn't have a lot of maximums for their values.
It's just uneducated pet parents that have decided that fiber is no bueno. Well, without fiber, kitties get megacolon and potentially life-threatening obstipation, constipation, and die. And you have presented now 4 or 5 consistent studies that there's just study after study showing what happens when you deny dogs the roughage they need to build an adequate microbiome. It is awful what happens when we deny dogs fiber.
So Karen, Rachel, if you're unaware, especially for the first-time pet parent, when you are jumping into a category of food, right? We're jumping in and out of communities, having this conversation kind of with you today. So if I was a board-certified veterinary nutritionist, sometimes I can be lost by what category that you're in there having the discussion. So to what Karen could be alluding to can be in many categories. One could be in the minimally processed category, and the subcategory, if between freeze-dried, between raw, and between lightly cooked, she's talking about the raw category. Within the raw category of commercially cooked groups, of commercially formulated, homemade, prey model rotational, then she could be even niched into maybe a prey model category where it's the fiber just comes from meat, right? When you're having a discussion about pet food, it's like know your audience because there's so many different types of people that watch. Look, between us, right, we have been blessed to have millions upon millions of followers because we're trying to have these discussions between millions and millions of different types of communities and groups where if you try to take this information to a specific group, it can create type of chaos, right? Sure. So to go back to the ingredient panel, look, when you're having it with a first-time pet parent, it can be very confusing. When you're having it with an advanced conversation, you're like, well, there's a lot of marketing that goes into these panels, right? Yes. Like meat first. In the olden days, you'd see a Purina package.
There's an echo? Is it fixed when I mute my own mic?
Package in a grocery store that would say lamb first ingredient. They were dropping those small packages when mail was a thing back in the day on the front of my doorstep, and I would pick it up and there would be a package of lamb is first ingredient in my Purina, and I would be, oh, dogs are wolves, you need to feed them like a wolf, right? Well, no. How did dog evolve? He started going into man's camp, follow the evolution of a dog, eating man's garbage. Was man's garbage all meat? I don't think so. They were consuming the meat. How many people could even afford meat? Yeah. 20,000 years ago.
So back to ingredient splitting and meat being first on the label. I think that this is, most people, if you ask them, what do you look for? I think the average pet parent's going to say, I look for meat first on a label. Right. But meat meal is different than whole meats. And because AFCO has a variety of definitions that are strictly theirs and they're private, what we think we're feeding, we may not be feeding. So if you can see.
Yeah, I'm assuming the echo is from my microphone, so I'm going to try muting it while I'm not talking. If I start talking and I haven't unmuted it, let me know, because I may forget.
A whole protein first on the label, like chicken or lamb or beef, that is a better start than a meal. But then the question is, if you add up the second, third, fourth, and fifth ingredient, what's the percentage of the secondary ingredients that if you add those together could potentially create the bulk of the diet?
And that's kind of the problem that we brought to light years ago. Manufacturers, believe it or not, has started changing the label because of the conversations that we're having, educating pet parents on how to look at the label, right? They know that people are going to look for the meat first. And we all know that that label is before the food is cooked, not after it's cooked, which shuffles the deck, right? So the advanced looks at the label and be like, I know what you're doing here. This is just marketing, right? Like we talk about ingredient splitting. As an example, if the manufacturer doesn't want to put peas as the first ingredient,
okay, can you still hear this?
He'll put pea starch. He'll put
and
pea
no
flour,
pea fiber,
pea fiber, And then you can break those 4 categories and move them lower so meat will move to the front. But that's like so ABC for us, but I know for the first time pet parent, they don't have any idea. The salt divider. Yeah. We've talked about, the salt divider was the first thing that came into my space 15 years ago, sitting, we were blessed to be able to sit down with Dr. Marian Nessel and those teams. AFCO has a definition for salt where it can't exceed more than 1% on a package. So food manufacturers would take advantage of that. A blueberry is a great example. Everybody loves blueberries. Who doesn't want blueberries in their food? You look at the package, and the front of the package can have a blueberry this big on it. You look on the back of the label, it's behind salt, meaning it's less than 1%. So you're like, wait a minute, how can you put a giant blueberry on the front of the bag if there's less than 1% on that bag? When we went and sat with AFCO in the FDA, and we sat with the FDA at the AFCO meeting, and we were like, how are you allowing manufacturers to do this? It's false advertisement for the pet parent who maybe needs a specific fruit or vegetable because they were told by their veterinarian. As a great example, cranberries. This is what I did as a kid. My dog had a UTI. My incredible veterinarian told me to give my dog cranberries, right? Because I had alkaline my dog's urine, and we won't go into the deep depths of this. So I went into the pet store and I said, I need cranberries. And there was the first package on the shelf of this bag of kibble. Rachel, the cranberry was this big.
Of course.
I was like, oh, this is perfect. My vet sent me in for this. I need this. And so I bought the package. I didn't know it was like 15 ingredients down below salt. There was nothing in the bag. I approached the FDA about that exact topic. Sorry, I started with blueberries and went to cranberries. And I said to the FDA, I was like, what is this? And they were like, it's freedom of speech. You can't tell the manufacturer how big of a pitcher it doesn't matter how many cranberries. If he wants to put a size of a fingernail, your finger,
that's right.
take your baby, your
I
small
think that's
finger,
ridiculous. It's ridiculous for pet food brands to be able to advertise these ingredients as if they're making up the entire bag when they're in such small amounts that they're not going to do anything beneficial. I totally agree. That's BS.
They're off and put it in the bag. I can put this many cranberries on the front of the bag.
My first tip out of his experience would be, when you look at the front of a pet food bag and there's a grilled sirloin steak, just rest assured, there ain't no grilled sirloin in your dog food bag. Zero.
Yes.
Zero.
Yes.
So, and the FDA, AFCO, does allow this.
Marketing in pet food is absolutely out of control. Like, obviously not every company does this, but by and large, it's bad.
I do call that false advertising because people think, oh, it's grilled.
I agree, Sarah.
It's
I
not
agree. It's
grilled
false
sirloin
advertising.
that's in your dog food. Wildly frustrated.
Right.
But if you flip the bag over, identify where salt is. Everything behind it. Some of these bags, I haven't looked at them yet, but I'll almost promise you that they'll say things like all the buzzwords, Rachel, which are going to be in this day and age: superfood, wholesome, whole food, and maybe the words antioxidant or longevity. These are all things that Rodney and I have kind of brought to light, and people like those terms, and companies realize that pet parents are looking for those things. So everything after salt. After salt, you could see blueberry, turmeric, you could see...
You know what else comes after salt is synthetic vitamins and minerals, which means those synthetic vitamins and minerals are making up less than 1% of the overall recipe.
All of this.
But yes, the salt rule is absolutely real. Like, if a company is listing a beneficial ingredient and it's under salt, you can probably guess that it doesn't have any sort of like therapeutic dose of that ingredient.
Superfoods are going to be in these very tiny amounts that actually are not in the food at a concentration high enough to confer any medicinal benefit. So they're in there so that the label looks good. But if you are spending money thinking that you are giving your dogs and cats extra antioxidants or polyphenols or flavonoids because of the trickery behind the salt, that's one way that you would be able to save money and just use real fresh food instead.
And that's why Rachel tells people, put in like a tablespoon of blueberries. Right. Put it.
Yes.
There's people that say, well, I don't know if it's really needed. The food is complete and balanced, and it's fine. It already has value. You don't need to add the blueberries. No, actually, if you follow data, just recently, just published in the Journal of Animal Science, like literally, when this clip comes out, it came out yesterday morning.
Yes, marketing is crazy, but people who are just into ingredients fall for it every time. Absolutely, because if you're just looking at a pet food label, you're just looking at the marketing. That's a great point, Charles.
Champion Pet Foods funded a study, Champion owned by Mars. They funded a study, they took 40 bags of extruded kibble from the market marketers can use the claim that you're getting this high polyphenol count, antioxidant count from the blueberries that we're putting into your diet. These veterinary scientists took 40 popular bags of pet food, analyzed them all, the ones that claimed that had blueberries in them, looking for those polyphenols, antioxidants, so on and so forth. They found nothing. They found nothing in the bags that could sustain the marketing claim on the package. So if you see blueberry on there and you're looking for all of the wonderful benefits that we have published research on the benefits of giving blueberries to dogs. If you rely on the bag, well, science is telling you that that label and that picture is just marketing. Follow Rachel's advice. Put a tablespoon of fresh whole blueberries in there. I promise you, you will get benefit from that food, mixing minimally processed blueberries versus the extruded blueberries. Here's the other part. The scientists don't know. One of the key factors that could be the problem is the extrusion process, those multiple steps that food has to go through to break the food matrix. I'm sorry, you asked me earlier about the food matrix. Yeah. In order to make ultra-processed food, and we know this to be true in science, published in Nature, when you want to make extruded food like kibble, in order to get it to go into a Play-Doh consistency and to feed through a dye, you need to do what's called breaking the food matrix of the food. So it has to go through these rendering steps. You asked earlier about meals. Well, meals are taking whole food byproducts and then converting it into a powder. It has to go through multiple steps to become powder. Now, somebody can say to you, well, if I'm delivering that whole nutrients ingredients argument, somebody can say to you, well, if I'm using a powder, it's still delivering those nutrients, right? But it's not responding in the body the same way a microbiologist would tell you. When you eat an apple and that apple goes into your body, there's fiber that remains in your gut lining that your microbes can eat. So let's just say, for argument's sake, because when we interviewed Dr. Tim Spector, 1% of the most cited scientists in the world, top microbiologist, 30% of that apple, for argument's sake, will sit in your microbiome and then those gut microbes could eat it. But if I put apple powder, like a pet food manufacturer would have to do to use as extruder, it's 100% absorbed, Rachel. It goes, so those nutrients are delivered. However, where's the fiber? It's been absorbed through the body. So it responds differently. Apple powder and an apple will respond differently in the body. The gut microbiome will respond, digestion will be different, glucose spikes will be different. There's so many different responses, even though both foods are both nutrient-wise the same, minimally processed and ultra-processed.
I don't disagree with any of this, but I think the question becomes, does this result in better health outcomes, which I don't think we know yet. And just because a dog is not getting the specific amount of fiber from the apple, that doesn't mean they're not getting beneficial fiber in their food.
They don't respond the same in the body. And for those that...
Have you already left yet? No. Oh, sorry, I'm all over the place. Oh, you're fine. Are you about to leave? Yeah, great.
Aren't really moving forward in science and are just under this whole ultra-processed food kick, you're going to be sadly mistaken when you start advancing. You can trick the first-time pet parent, but the guys that love science that are going to dig deeper in it, you are crazy if you are comparing ultra-processed food to minimally processed food if they are both equally balanced. You are crazy. They don't respond the same. We have enough science. We have papers published in Nature to show how these are responding in the body, but these marketers will just run away with that.
So back to your nutrients versus ingredients, both are important, Rachel. Both are very important because both can be synthetic. Nutrients can be synthetic or come from food. And that's a conversation about how does an animal's physiology respond, because the physiology does respond differently. Same with ingredients. An apple powder and a whole apple, our pet's physiology respond differently. So ingredient, form, and fashion and quality is important. Nutrient, form, and...
Yes, kibble absolutely does have fiber. They're often using beet pulp. I don't know if I've seen companies use psyllium husk. But yes, just because an apple breaks down the fiber when you process it doesn't mean kibble doesn't have fiber. Because if kibble didn't have fiber, every single dog would have anal gland issues and kidney issues, according to Dr. Karen.
And fashion, quality, and amounts is really important. So both are, it's not one or other, or, we just believe in nutrients or we just believe in ingredients. We have to recognize that they have a relationship, and there's also a quality factor that we need to be thinking about. And these are 2.0 conversations, but it is something that all pet parents need to be aware of, so they at least are aware of all of the things that they need to be thinking about when they pick up a bag of food.
Right.
So when you start counting those vitamin and mineral supplements on the back of the bag, so you're going to see some type of meat-based protein, then you're going to see all of the starches, then you're going to see a source of fat, and then you're going to see all of the synthetic nutrients. And you can start counting each, there's a comma between every vitamin and mineral supplement. There's a comma, so you can just count them. And the average bag of ultra-processed pet food has anywhere between 12 and 26 added lab-made nutrients, which have to be...
All of these like fear-based terms, lab-made, synthetic, unnatural. Like it's just interesting to hear other people talk about things that are chemically identical to the nutrients in whole foods. So does vitamin D also come with the rest of the stuff in eggs? No, but if my dog needs just vitamin D, they can get it from eggs or from a synthetic source and be totally fine. Why do you think human doctors recommend vitamin D supplements so often? It's because humans have a hard time getting vitamin D from whole foods alone.
Added in to make the diet minimally nutrient compliant to meet an animal's needs.
I will never agree that the amount of synthetics in a food determines the quality, because look at this. If you go to Just Food for Dogs, fresh meals, frozen, let's just look at like first recipe, chicken and rice. Ingredients. 1, 2, well, we won't call sunflower oil. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Just Food for Dogs, the gently cooked, whole food focused, formulated by veterinary nutritionist food, uses 17 synthetic vitamins and minerals. So there's no world where counting the amount of synthetic vitamins and minerals on a pet food label is what determines good food from bad food. That's just not what the science supports.
The number of, I would tell pet parents to count those nutrients. Okay. Because the lower
I would not.
The number,
Danielle
the more
Conway would
nutrients
not.
coming from whole foods.
Sure.
The higher number of added vitamins. Some people will say the more added vitamins and minerals, the better, because my animal's getting more vitamins and minerals. All that means is that the nutrients coming from whole foods isn't there, and so the company has to supplement.
So you're telling me Just Food for Dogs, which uses chicken, white rice, brown rice, chicken liver, kale, carrots, and apples, does not have a lot of nutrients coming from whole food? How would they not have a lot of nutrients coming from whole food when 15 out of the 17 synthetic vitamins and minerals are under the salt divider? This is what does not make sense to me.
With lab-made vitamins and minerals.
Sure. Well, what if we get into some of the vilified ingredients? I have a bag of food here where in the first handful of ingredients, it's corn gluten meal, wheat, soy, and you talked earlier about there are some people who think like rice is evil. We shouldn't have any rice or no peas. Right. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because I get a lot of feedback of foods where a lot of the protein comes from corn gluten meal, as an example.
Sure.
And then that's okay because it's the nutrients over the ingredients. That's hard for me to wrap my head around.
So I'm going to let you jump into it, Karen, for a second. Let me tell you where my take would be with a dog that had cancer. So let's talk about the guaranteed analysis, because you touched on.
My question, is it bad, different, or neutral when it comes to the response from fresh versus synthetics? I don't totally know. What I know, though, is that synthetic vitamins and minerals are chemically identical to the ones in whole foods. Do whole foods come with extra stuff, fiber, antioxidants, polyphenols that are beneficial? Yes, but a pet food can use synthetic vitamins and minerals and still deliver those polyphenols and antioxidants and fiber while still using the synthetic. I can like people will say, oh, feed eggs for choline because they also have protein. Well, I can add a synthetic choline supplement and then add a different protein source and achieve the same result.
Quickly, you said, what are your thoughts of the guaranteed analysis? It needs work. And it needs work in many ways. And
I don't really use the guaranteed analysis at all anymore when I'm determining the pet food, because I agree. I don't think it gives you a ton of information. It's usually not in dry matter, which is what you actually need to compare it to other foods. And what I do instead is look at the life stage that the food was formulated for. Because if a food is formulated for adult maintenance, it has to meet the specific adult maintenance requirements set by AAFCO and the NRC. If it's puppy food, it has to meet the strict requirements of puppy food. So my thinking is get food that aligns with your dog's life stage versus trying to crunch all these numbers that may or may not actually mean anything useful to you and I.
Who is looking at the guaranteed analysis, whether it's a food formulator, a first-time pet parent, whether it's a veterinarian, whether it's a board-certified veterinary oncologist, all of us, there's only so much information you're going to get from that. One of the travesties that we have right now in the industry is that the number one source of energy that's coming from that bag, the number one macro ingredient in that bag is not listed on that label, and why not?
Yeah.
What are we talking about? You have protein, you have fat, you have fiber, you have moisture, you have the key macros, let's say, on that bag. Where's carbohydrates?
Yep. Or more specifically, starch.
Where is the starch?
Starch.
Because when you are using corn byproduct, when you're using rice, I have no problem with these ingredients in a minimally processed format, feeding them in small incremental amounts to my animals to diversify their microbiome, because I know there's benefit.
Sure.
When you want to talk about the evolution of dogs who were eating man's garbage, those were all dogs were eating that for tens of thousands of years in man's garbage. Come on, let's be real here. However, when you are using these ingredients as macronutrients to formulate your foods, and let's say it does come from protein, let's say it does, if you have a fat category, the number one macronutrient where energy is delivered is carbohydrates, and it's not listed on the bag. Now it delivers the argument as to why. I attended AAFCO. You'll remember the board-certified veterinary nutritionist who got up and said pet parents don't want it there because it confuses them. Really, but why doesn't it confuse the mom who's shopping in the product aisle for her foods when she wants to know how these macronutrients are being delivered? Okay.
I think it confuses them because high carb doesn't equal bad. I think that veterinary nutritionist is saying the carbohydrates aren't listed because whether they're low or high is not exactly what determines a quality pet food. Now, one thing I'm still wondering is why just that one and not the protein and other stuff? 1 point for synthetics is, as they mentioned earlier, the nutrients that are expected to be in whole foods aren't guaranteed due to environment damage. They're not guaranteed due to environment damage. They're not guaranteed due to sourcing and what the animals eat and the fucking weather of that year. Like, all these different things could affect the vitamins and minerals. And so I don't think we should use 100% synthetics, but when we use synthetics to replace the really nutrient-dense foods like beef liver that can be so variable, it probably makes pet food safer, at least in my opinion.
With cancer. I sat down with the world's top veterinary oncologists and human oncologists on this debate. We know that starch, especially high glucose, can fuel certain type of cancers exponentially. I have a dog with cancer. Now, you're not listing the levels of carbohydrates on the guaranteed analysis for me. I'm trying to avoid high starchy, high glucose-based foods because I'm trying to control my dog's cancer spread working with my board-certified veterinary integrative oncologist. I don't have that data. You're not putting it there for me. Why isn't it there? So now, as a pet parent, there is some use.
There's also a really easy way you can determine the carbohydrates in the food, which is take 100 minus the protein, minus the fat, minus the fiber, minus the moisture. And what you're left with is the carbohydrate percentage. Doesn't give you the starch percentage, of course.
Of that guaranteed analysis, because according to AAFCO, I got to go in there. I got to add my protein. I got to add my fat. I got to add my fiber. I got to add my moisture. I have to minus it from 100 to get.
You have to do math.
I have to do math to get a generalized knowledge of how much starch my animal is consuming, because I'm trying to avoid things like cancer or seizures or a disease.
Yeah, obesity.
Or obesity, and I'm not getting that because somebody will.
Obesity is not caused by food having carbohydrates in it. Obesity is caused by overfeeding. Let's just put that out there.
Either a marketer will tell me, oh, you don't need it because all macros are the same. Why do you need to know about carbohydrates? So that's when I'm concerned about a lot of these products. Am I concerned about corn? I have a concern about corn pertaining to aflatoxins in food. Did we not just allegedly kill hundreds of animals a few years ago that we're ignoring
mycotoxins
because
are
of
one of the main
mycotoxins and
pet foods are recalled.
aflatoxins because of an ingredient?
That's right.
When you tell me ingredients don't matter, that can't be true, because there was a whole subset of animals that died because corn, which was used as an ingredient in a product, killed hundreds of animals. That
Rodney is literally kind of admitting where he's wrong here. He's saying that ingredients don't matter. Well, corn has killed a bunch of animals because of aflatoxins. Well, that's not corn's issue. That's an aflatoxin issue. That doesn't mean corn kills animals. That means when food has too many aflatoxins, it kills animals. So I think that's too big of a simplification.
massive recall that happened in the United States, the southern part of the United States. So how can there be no issue there? Then one manufacturer will argue, well, we test our aflatoxins level before we put our corn in there.
Well,
Yeah.
what are all the recalls from? Yeah,
Yeah,
all
like,
that.
what are we talking? They're all important. We need to stop saying that ingredients aren't important and only nutrients are important. Nutrients are important, ingredients are important.
Yeah.
They're all important, and equally, if not even more important, is the processing of those ingredients.
Yeah. Yes.
Are you buying your pet food extruded? Are you buying it semi-moist? Are you buying it baked? Are you buying it air-dried?
By the way, I don't know that Rodney will necessarily tell you this, but you are not a bad pet parent for feeding extruded food. There's a lot of people that demonize it. There's a lot of people that say you don't deserve dogs if you don't feed or if you feed kibble. That's not true. Fed is best, regardless of what anyone is going to tell you. And these people like Rodney and Karen, I think, are focusing on like what is the best of the best of the best. For most pet parents, the best thing you can do is feed your dog a balanced food that you can afford.
Are you buying it dehydrated? Are you buying it canned? Are you buying it freeze-dried? Are you buying it lightly cooked? Are you buying it raw commercial? All of these are different adulteration steps, and they will all respond differently within the body. And we have research to show if I feed kibble, dry extruded, and I move up to dehydrated, brand new published study, pet food industry focused on it in Spring or Nature, those animals did better immune system, lower glucose response. Two identically balanced foods. One was extruded, one was dehydrated. The animals that did dehydrated, because there was less adulteration steps, that ate dehydrated soy, did better. Animals that ate
Did
lightly
better
cooked
regarding what?
did better.
Resulted in better health outcomes? Because a few biomarkers doesn't tell us that these are going to result in better health outcomes.
Animals that ate freeze-dried did better. We have research to show adulteration of the food really
Huge,
matters,
Matt,
but that's not a
yes,
conversation.
yeah.
It's not a conversation we're ready to have.
No,
we
the
want to
pet
make it
food-
about nutrient and ingredient, but let's
Right.
not talk about
No.
the adulterate, the
No,
food
that's
processing.
right.
Those processing techniques that can affect
That's
the
right.
food.
And just so you know, veterinary medicine is the only category of wellness that still trying to convince entire generation of pet food, of pet loving parents that ultra processed pet foods are fine, because not a single
Ultra processed pet foods are fine. They are. Like millions of dogs are living to 15 plus on these foods. This is the kind of fear-based marketing or language that I don't like. She's literally saying, we live in a world where vets are the only wellness professionals that say ultra-processed food is fine. So she's basically saying if you feed your dog ultra-processed food, it's not fine. It's not good. And that to me is shameful. That's fear-based. That's making pet parents feel like they're not good enough because they're feeding ultra-processed food. I will never stand by that. That is, I think, absolute bullshit.
day in vet school are we taught about any ramifications of high heat processing. The whole Maillard reaction product, this is 2.0 conversation, but we are not taught in veterinary school anything about any potential downfalls of feeding ultra processed food from birth to death. There's a zero conversation happening. Veterinarians are kind, loving, wonderful, intelligent people.
Except the ones that recommend ultra-processed food, apparently.
But if they don't know about these unwanted chemical reactions that occur in ultra-processed foods, then they're not passing that information along to their clients because they were not taught it.
I don't
But
get these people.
the human space, the ongoing conversation of why we should be minimizing our consumption of ultra-processed foods and is happening in the human space, and it's not happening in the veterinary space. We still have the pet food industry trying to convince us that ultra-processed foods are healthier than less processed
It's
foods.
insanity.
It's insane.
I haven't heard from anyone that claims that two foods that are the exact same, one minimally processed, one ultra processed, the ultra processed is better. I've never heard a vet say that. I've never heard a veterinary nutritionist say that. What they're saying is that for the large majority of people, the safest thing you can do is feed a commercially prepared food created by an expert, tested to be safe. And most of the time that ends up being kibble.
Insanity. The other thing
It's
that is, I think,
insanity.
would be a really difficult thing for a brand new pet parent to understand is after we just get done saying
Agreed, Sarah.
dogs and cats don't have a requirement for starch. I mean, there's a little narrow window during pregnancy that carbs can be beneficial, but by nature, dogs and cats do not require starch in the diet. But is corn an awful toxic food? No. Are peas and legumes and lentils a toxin to a dog? No. It's about
Neither is a synthetic vitamin and mineral.
how much you're feeding.
Variation, moderation, and balance.
Popping a tablespoon of garbanzo beans into your dog's diet will totally help actually grow certain beneficial bacteria in their GI tract. Giving a 60% garbanzo bean or legume-based diet, really bad idea.
Yeah.
So that's part of the confusion. Brand new pet parents are like, well, wait, I thought peas were bad. Peas have some incredible benefits, actually, in terms of building certain species in the gut. The downside is a 60% starch-based diet of any starch, Rachel, not just peas, corn, rice, potato, tapioca. Feeding 60% starch to an animal that doesn't require any for most phases of life, that's the conversation we need to be having. So
I don't disagree with Karen at all here. I think she makes a really good point, which is that it's not about individual ingredients being villainized. It's about the balance. It's about, an expert knowing about what the ratios should be of protein and carbohydrates and vitamins and minerals and various things and putting that together. It's not corn is bad. Synthetic vitamins and minerals are bad. Grains are bad. Meat meals are bad. It's all about the balance.
What we need to teach pet parents is how to add up the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth ingredient and say, okay, that appears to be a lot of starch. Doing the guaranteed analysis math, I think, is an important thing to teach new pet parents. Figuring out how much starch is in their.
This is so misleading that he puts sugar under carbs. Carbs are not sugar. Like this, when I say this, I'm not saying that carbs and sugar aren't made up of similar things or that they don't. What my issue with is the oversimplification that carbs are sugar. If you're feeding your dog a potato, you're feeding them a spoonful of sugar. It's literally not the same thing. Just like, okay, I gotta calm down. I'm getting triggered here. You all need to let me know when I'm getting triggered. Help keep me in line. Rodney and Karen villainize synthetic vitamins and minerals because they don't come with all the extra things that whole foods come with, right? Fiber, polyphenols, antioxidants. Is this not doing the same thing where they are basically saying carbs are just sugar without also identifying all the extra polyphenols and antioxidants and fiber that come with carbohydrates? That to me is a misleading graphic.
In their food is an important thing. But to say that all of those individual whole foods are toxic to animals is just also not true.
Right.
So it's everything in balance and in moderation, and in recognizing that dogs and cats do best eating a meat-based diet and choosing diets that have enough protein to fuel their metabolic machinery is an important thing that first-time pet parents need to be able to do.
How would any pet parent know how much protein dogs need to maintain their mechanical machinery? Like, what? That confuses me so much.
If the majority of your product is a starch, I would probably not feed that food, because dogs and cats need a lot of methionine and cysteine, 2 amino acids, specifically coming either supplemented at high amounts or coming from meat. They need to have key amino acids to be able to make enough taurine, and kitties have to be supplied taurine directly in the food. This whole DCM debacle really comes down to an amino acid deficiency. If there was enough amino acids in the food for dogs to make taurine and kitties to be supplied taurine, we would not have DCM, nutritional related DCM. There also can be genetic DCM.
Yeah, what a huge marketing clash between so many companies. Many people, allegedly blame Purina for this big jump in creating this grain-free debacle. One of the fastest growing segments, I think it was up to, don't quote me on this, but like $22 million out of the 44 million that was in pet food.
Let's just also put out there, I've had conversations with Rodney where he has told me that Purina Pro Plan is not a bad food. So
food in the dry extruded kibble category, like 22 million was just grain-free. It was the fastest growing segment in the ultra-processed
And what a great way to
kibble
take it out, but
category.
to create a big,
And so
right?
there was this alleged debate. Now, recently, Hill's Science Diet funded a study that we shared, trying to find the correlation between DCM and using two ingredients, peas and potatoes. And so they took some diets, they put peas in one diet, potatoes in the other, they mixed them together, one with grain, one without grain. I believe it was an 18-month trial. It was double-blinded, parallel group, upper echelon type of study that Hills funded, and came back with that there's no correlation to those
Yeah,
ingredients
as long as you
and
have enough
dilated
aminos. That's right.
cardiomyopathy.
It's interesting that the framing here was that Hills funded this study trying to prove that they were right, and not them being like, oh yeah, Hills funded this really cool study that ended up showing X. You see how there's some of that that bias, that anti-kibble bias they have in some of the language that they use?
And I know there's more research to come out, but this, you hit the nail on the head here where, now we're picking on, people are focusing on this ingredient bad, this ingredient
Right.
good, this, and this is where you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. Variation, moderation, balance. And one last thing on starch. We know now through microbiology and animal biome that there has to be a certain subset of bacteria for your animal to digest that starch properly. So you can't just say starch is good for everybody. Either genetics or microbiome plays a huge role. There's a bacteria called Provotella that is responsible for the digestion of simple carbohydrates. If you have too much or not enough of this bacteria, you can create IBD, IBS-like symptoms.
SIBO, yeah.
Right? So if you're not testing a dog's microbiome to see if they can even handle that type of starch load, you can get yourself into some trouble when you're going into perfectly formulated diets, but then they start ramping up into the 50, 60, 70% categories. There are therapeutic diets out there where the number one ingredient is starch.
There are.
What
and
happens if the
yes,
dog's missing the bacteria to digest it? Who's
Right.
testing for that?
That, and also back to the whole, you had a cardiologist in your hometown that said, I'm nervous about a grain-free diet. You should add rice.
Right.
My goodness. Let's just clarify this. There's no taurine in any carbohydrate. None. There's so taurine,
True.
the richest source of taurine is in seafood, scallops specifically. So seafood is
Oh, I
a
didn't
really
know that.
great source of taurine. Feeding heart is a good source of taurine.
I was talking with Dr. Conway about this whole DCM issue and taurine as it relates to it. And if you look at the research, you'll notice that, some of the dogs that developed DCM had high levels of taurine, some of them had low levels of taurine. And my assumption was, then taurine isn't a factor. But I was talking with Danielle, and she was like, no, I think taurine is a factor for some dogs and not a factor for others. So I think what Karen's saying here is spot on, which is that, dogs don't have improved heart health because they're eating grains. There's no taurine in grains. There's not really anything in there that's going to support heart health.
Adding grains to a diet to try and prevent DCM makes no sense because there's no taurine in grains.
And sorry, I should have said that. In that Hill Science Diet study that was recently published, they showed that even tinkering with peas and potatoes and so on and so forth, there was no effect on taurine levels because the manufacturer was trying.
Yeah, what, Sparkle? Are you supposed to be the one that tests your dog's microbiome? I don't know, because I'm not testing that.
It was already compensating.
That's just it.
Yeah.
If you're adding taurine to the diet, it doesn't matter. You can feed a lot of legumes. I still don't recommend it for all the reasons that you have just described.
Absolutely.
But it's not.
I don't know if we know that for a fact, that you can just feed a bunch of taurine and feed a bunch of legumes and they're good. Because there were dogs that had high levels of taurine that also got DCM.
That legumes in and of themselves, if you want to feed a bite of lentils to your dog and she'll eat it, grand. It's so difficult because we vilify single ingredients to the point that people assume that there's toxicosis. Like almonds, I did a post.
Are we not sitting here in a podcast that vilifies synthetic vitamins and minerals? And we're talking about vilifying individual ingredients?
About almonds, and someone said, you should know better, Dr. Becker. You can't feed dogs almonds, because what they had heard is that they were toxic. They're not toxic. It's a choking risk, just like with kids.
Just like socks are choking risks,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
So never wear socks and have them around the house. You're 100%. Board certified veterinary nutritionist Justin Schmalberg just posted a peer-reviewed paper out there showing the benefits of almonds. There's almond meal in I don't know how many diets out there on the market.
So part of this is just dispelling some of these food myths and misconceptions. It's helping people understand that it's not, these single ingredients in these foods are not bad, but when you add up all the starch, if the diet is really starch heavy, you could probably do much better by your animal picking a diet that has more meat-based protein.
So I think to summarize, when we're looking at pet food, and I hope we had some really actionable tips for those watching. I think we do, but I think it really just comes down to less is more in a lot of ways. Meaning, when you're looking at the ingredients, if you have fewer vitamin synthetics, if you have
That's not better.
or a little bit less starch in the food. If it's a less adulterated, less processed, so maybe a baked kibble or an air-dried food over an extruded kibble could.
You know what's interesting is Rodney and Karen talk about how grain-free was the fastest growing sector in pet food, and that's why Big Kibble wanted to take it down. Could the reverse not be said, that kibble is the biggest sector in pet food and individuals like this want to take them down? I don't think that we can make blanket statements like that on either side.
Be better, and just understanding that a lot of what you're seeing on the front of the bag is going to be marketing, and really the best way to get the answers is to ask the manufacturer. And I do think that's a powerful ask of this community, because I think the more of us that reach out to these brands and demand better and demand questions and to understand the why, I think that's going to be an incredible way to push for change. So I know we're very limited on time, but do you want to touch high level on a topic that I get and a question I get quite often, which is on, it's even hard to say because I say it, I know that the algorithm's listening and will suppress, but vaccinations, I'll say it once. And I think that there's some there's some confusion in believing that maybe both of you might be anti-vax and you don't believe in vaccinating animals. And I know that not to be true, but I want to understand from you where your thoughts are on that.
So the brains and the intellect would obviously fall with Dr. Karen Becker, so I will not try to assume any type of knowledge in terms of the functions. But as a fan of citizen science and going and sitting with immunologists like Dr. Ronald Schultz, Dr. Lori Larson, Dr. Richard Ford. I mean, these are the people that wrote the protocols for the veterinarians to give the vaccines. I can tell you this is a very difficult topic to talk about because it is such a polarizing topic around the world. You have so many different groups of people and philosophies around this. For us,
it's kind of wild that the first things out of their mouth weren't get your dogs vaccinated, but there's some nuance. Like, I still don't get the vibe that they're not anti-vax yet.
One of the key things that we've been trying to highlight for decades, Dr. Becker started. It's when me watching her video with
yes, Dr.
immunologist
Becker
Dr.
is
Ronald
a veterinarian.
Schultz, was all the research that started
not
to
board
come
certified
out
in anything.
with this term called over-vaccinating, right? You would get that notice in the mail, come in. Some pet owners were vaccinating every 6 months. Some were vaccinating every 3 months for like Bordetella and things like that. And we vaccinate because we want to protect our pets. We want to protect them from diseases and so on and so forth. Speaking as a pet parent, I would go into my vet, give me all of the vaccines. I want my dog to be with me and my cat to be with me forever. And then all of a sudden research started to pour out, and I believe it was after 2012, Karen, if I'm not mistaken, when the guidelines to the vaccine protocol started changing globally around the world, where folks were like, hey, the immunologists were like, hey, we just have data that just came out that vaccinating over and over and over and with under like 6 months to less of a period can be problematic. There can be adverse events that can potentially happen. And sarcomas, the sarcoma study in cats where they had to change the injection sites after the study that anyone before 2012, when you get a vaccine, the animal will get it in the back of the neck, and now it's moved down to the leg and the tail. And this all came from the new data and research that was published that you brought to light. And so when we were trying to warn people about all of the new research and studies that came out, just myself just being a messenger of citizen science, that, hey, over-vaccinating can be a really big problem. I think this is where that term, I know it's a term today in the human space, but back when we were talking about it in 2012, 2015, so on and so forth, nobody knew what the heck over-vaccinating was. And you had to spend your career trying to bring that knowledge to light to your fellow colleagues.
Don't shred that. One sec.
Love it.
Sorry, Banks was chewing on a paper towel.
And still, it's a wildly confusing topic. Just even saying that term over-vaccinating, you are automatically bucketed into an anti-vaxxer, which is so interesting to me. I am a data-driven science junkie, but I'm also, I have perfectionistic tendencies when it comes to my patients. So I want to do everything I can to protect my patients, but I also take my oath my veterinary oath very seriously to do no harm. Here's when I started questioning things. First of all, the logical, common sense Iowa girl that I am, I was vaccinated for measles, mumps, rubella when I was a little girl. And I don't go in every year. None of us go in every year and get a booster shot. So in vet school, I was like, hey, we're learning about modified live viruses, which is, parvo and distemper, things we vaccinate dogs for. Kitties have their own modified live protocols. I would like to, hey, we as humans don't go in every year to boost our measles, mumps, rubella. Like, why are we doing it for dogs? And it was it's a true statement. My immunology professor said, well, because we don't know exactly how long the vaccines last. We know it lasts longer than a year, but we don't really know how long. Well, here's the blessed part about the evolution of veterinary medicine. Finally, as technology, like we finally got MRIs for dogs and CTs when I was in vet school. Woo, like finally we're kind of catching up. So during this evolution of veterinary medicine, one of the beautiful evolutions was, guess what? We finally have this new advanced blood test that can show us when vaccines were off. I'm like, I am such a science junkie. That is so cool because I'm a girl. Why would we guess and keep giving something that may not be necessary? But I think even more importantly, I have had animals that I vaccinated that get parvo. And I'm like, what the hell's that? I'm doing this to protect this beautiful animal from getting sick, and it didn't protect. Like, how did we have vaccine failure? So these are questions that keep me up at night as a practitioner. So when the vaccine antibody testing started to become available, and I made contact with Dr. Richard Schultz, who runs the immunology lab out of the Madison Vet School, I said, this is the best gift to doctors because we don't have to guess. We can have the science and know what the immunologic status is of dogs and cats. He goes, isn't it amazing? I'm like, why isn't everyone doing this?
I can tell you why. Nope, don't bark. Yeah, the reason people don't titer test all the time is because when we went to get our titer tests for one vaccine, it was like $200 to $300. So there is no world where titer tests being $200 or $300 per vaccine are going to be something viable for you and me to monitor our dog's antibodies or whatever it's called with vaccines. And so my assumption is I would rather just go in and get the vaccine and know that they're covered when I can't afford to test my dog for all the different vaccines.
Well, as I started to talk about this and say we have brand new, thank God, evolution in veterinary medicine to show us, because the animals that are unprotected, they need to be vaccinated. But the animals that are protected,
they can barely go to the
giving
vet.
more vaccines, once an animal has been immunized, which means once they have developed protective immunity, giving them more vaccines doesn't boost them. You can't boost an already immunized immune system. And this was something that
well, then why would we even vaccinate in the first place? Because if you give a dog a rabies vaccine, and why are you titering them at all? If you give a dog a vaccine and they never need a booster, what's the point in titering? It's almost as if dogs, the immunity drops and you have to boost it.
Even now with veterinarians, I have talked about this with many veterinarians, and they'll say to me, I remember that in vet school, but it's not, you forget. Veterinarians forget. Once you have protective immunity, then you're good. But how do you know?
For
you
life?
don't know unless you do a vaccine antibody titer, which is a simple blood test. And every veterinarian, both national labs, IDEXX and Antech, you can do this. This seems like it's such a gift to veterinary medicine.
Yeah, also when I look things up, dogs naturally is not a source I'm trusting. Yeah, right here. I just read it. Although most of our vaccines have a very high success rate in dogs, none produces immunity in 100% vaccinated dogs. While vaccine programs are designed to maximize immunity, is it important to recognize that they do not provide 100% immunity against the disease. So this is not just like you give a dog a vaccine once, they're good, why are we even testing or giving them more? It's not how it works.
Medicine to have this blessed test, so we're not guessing. I'm a girl who wants to know, is my patient protected or are they not? I thought that the entire
Is my patient protected or are they not? Well, it sounds like you're saying if they got the vaccine, they're going to be protected for life. So why even test?
veterinary community would embrace this. But instead, Rodney,
they don't embrace it because in my opinion, giving the vaccine is safer. Because so many pet parents are going to refuse the titer test because they can't afford them, and it's better to make sure dogs are vaccinated by giving them yearly vaccines than hopefully testing, and if they can't test, just assuming.
I was bucketed as an anti-vaxxer, and I'm like, wait. What do you mean? I want to make sure my patients have protective immunity. I will vaccinate them, but then I want to know in my heart the vaccine worked. Yep. How do you get bucketed as an anti-vaxxer when you're actually doing cutting-edge science with the latest technology?
See, I'm getting contradictory statements. She's saying that you give a dog a vaccine once and they're protected for life, and now she's saying, why would I not titer to make sure that the vaccine worked?
Resources that allowed me to provide the best medicine for my patients, and I can look my owners in the face and say, your dog is protected, or give my clients a choice. Do you want to know if your animal's protected, or do you want to guess? Who would say guess?
I don't want to guess. I want to get the vaccine because then I know that my animal is protected and not pay $300 per vaccine to find out if they still have immunity, where I can just get them yearly.
Yeah. And yet, by having this conversation, I somehow ended up in the anti-vaxxer bucket.
No,
Bad?
not that.
Someone said, of course.
Because if you've ever worried about the
National Labs, IDEXX, and Antech, you can do this. This seems like it's such a gift to veterinary medicine to have this blessed test, so we're not guessing. I'm a girl who wants to know, is my patient protected or are they not? I thought that the entire veterinary community would embrace this. But instead, Rodney, I was bucketed as an anti-vaxxer, and I'm like, wait. What do you mean? I want to make sure my patients have protective immunity. I will vaccinate them, but then I want to know in my heart the vaccine worked. Yep. How do you get bucketed as an anti-vaxxer when you're actually doing cutting-edge science with the latest technology and resources that allowed me to provide the best medicine for my patients, and I can look my owners in the face and say, your dog is protected, or give my clients a choice. Do you want to know if your animal's protected, or do you want to guess? Who would say guess? Yeah. And yet, by having this conversation, I somehow ended up in the anti-vaxxer bucket. I don't
think it's just that conversation that made people think that. I think it's many different things. Like we've been talking about here, a lot of times Rodney and Karen's language can maybe say things that are contradictory to what they actually mean.
Understand that this is the best medicine we can do, and I believe when it's possible, if you can afford to do best medicine practices, this vaccine antibody titers are best medicine. If you can't afford to do best medicine, then you can choose, to vaccinate for parvo and distemper every 3 years, and you may or may not need it. And then you're just wasting money. But, there is the potential that every single time we give unnecessary vaccines to an animal that's already protected, you run the risk of having an adverse reaction or having an autoimmune reaction in the body. So there can be adverse events. The more that we give unnecessary injections to animals that don't need them, the potential for things to go wrong is there. So in a
The less we vaccinate, the potential for animals to die from the things we vaccinate for is there. So,
nutshell, I don't really know how this amazing new technology, blessed to the veterinary profession, got so skewed, but it's sad because it's preventing people from making the best medical decisions for their animals.
And I think it's important to talk a little bit about, we've just a couple minutes, about how it can be more affordable to do titer testing, because there are ways that you can send it in, get the blood draw yourself.
$55.
Right,
You can submit to the Madison School Immunology Lab. Your veterinarian will charge a fee to draw the blood. And if your veterinarian is just not compliant, like you could go in and say, hey, Dr. So-and-so, will you do a vaccine antibody titer? I just want to know. And if my dog needs a boost, we'll boost. But if my dog doesn't need a boost, the boosting is not going to do anything other than me pay you money that I don't need to be spending. So rather than pay for a vaccine, you might as well pay to know if you need it.
Fair.
Because chances
and then if you need it, pay again.
are, what I said to when I was first introducing titers to my clients in 2002, they said to me, I don't really want to pay twice. So finally, to build trust in this brand new system of this advanced technology we finally have, I said, listen, if your dog needs a booster, I'll cover the bill. So you pay for the titer, and if your dog or cat needs to be boosted, I'll boost for free. And that's how I convinced my 15,000 clients to be like, to believe in advanced diagnostic testing, because they're like, oh my gosh, my dog's protected. And then next year they're still protected. And that is how I gained the trust of my own clients. Now, I tried to take that worldwide, and the backlash was pretty significant.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
Yeah. But it is best practice. And I'm a girl who wants to know. I want to know the most information to make the best decisions for the animals that as a veterinarian I'm caring for, and as a pet parent, I want to make the best decisions based on science that I can for my own pets. And vaccine antibody titers is absolutely standard of care and best medicine. So if you can afford the $55, do it. And my final words are, all of us, I believe the best thing we can do for ourselves, our careers, our professions, and the animals we care for is to be flexible and curious. To learn and unlearn and relearn is what every scientist around the world has to do, but it's also what every pet parent has to do. The things that we thought were true 15 years ago, we have learned new science and we change our opinions. And to grow and learn based on what science is showing is what I believe we're all called to do. So that does mean sometimes rearranging your opinion, and you can admit that. I've had to do that for my stance on spay-neuter techniques. I've had to do that on a lot of different things because I've learned more that has allowed me to be a better doctor. Okay. Being able to change our opinions and voice why is important, but attacking other people for their opinions, speak your truth and teach people why you believe so strongly in your path. Relying on attacking others for what they believe not only doesn't move the dial forward, it confuses the audience. We want to provide a whole network of tapestry where pet parents can plug into ideas, philosophies, and viewpoints that resonate with them. Allowing people the opportunity to switch camps and get different viewpoints is part of the evolutionary process, and we need to embrace and support people for their viewpoint. But attacking other camps is not a way forward. It's just a way to keep things confused and give pet parents lack of agency to be able to feel like they will know enough to be able to make good decisions.
Absolutely. And I just want to end on saying I think that's why you are the two most followed in the entire world pet health experts, veterinarian, pet science junkie, and are having the impact that you both are. New York Times best-selling authors. I mean, you don't get to that level by bringing others down. You don't get to that level by attacking others' beliefs. You get to that level by making original content, by having integrity in what you do. And that's inspired me so much, so I appreciate being able to have this time with both of you.
Okay, and that's that. What are our thoughts? That was long. I definitely agree with that message at the end there that Karen said, though, of like, we don't move the needle by attacking others. And hopefully that's not what I did here. I never want to attack Rodney or Karen. I just want to share where I feel like maybe they have some blind spots. I don't feel better. Sparkle, I'm sorry. Data does show that unless the dog is a non-responder or has immune issues, when you do the puppy series, they will have achieved immunity. For life? Maybe for like some of those specific things. Dr. Ray said that titers are only good for that particular moment, not long-term. She does them because clients request them, not because she believes in them. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, Melinda. Like, titers feel like a snapshot in time, and it's... I don't know. I just feel better with my dogs being on a scheduled vaccination routine. All right, friends, I think that's going to wrap up today. We officially cracked the 3-hour mark, so goodness. I'll be back tomorrow morning, and then on Thursday, we're making some more homemade dog food. So thank you all so much for being here today. Always appreciative for every single one of you, and I'm really, really loving being able to connect with you more on a regular basis. So thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday, and we'll see you in the morning.